There we go. Okay, cool. All right. It was wigging out on YouTube, guys, so bear with me here. I think I've got it going right here. Okay, so we should be live everywhere. Hi, guys. Welcome to the stream. Mike's microphone is going to drive everyone, including me, insane as he munches on popcorn.
I will mute. I will mute while I am.
Whoa.
I will mute while I do that. I promise. I will mute.
Oh my.
Maybe.
That.
Oh.
What's up, Scrambles? Good to see you, man. Good to see you, Vinny.
All right, find out where the hell everybody
to the
is.
main view here. That way we got everybody here.
I'm sure no one will have a problem with anything that Mullis is doing.
Oh, no
one ever does.
Oh, no.
Why would they ever? Why would they ever?
He's endearing himself to the audience.
That will never be in a video, ever.
No, not at all. None the least. Guys, let me know if you get any echo or anything like that. Make sure that you can kind of hear everybody. What's up, Al? Good to see you. So we're just kind of getting started here and kind of get everybody here. We're going to kind of catch up on how everybody's been this week, what everybody's been
Getting
doing.
these chats popped out here. Hang on.
Oh, HTK's popping in on the Rumble side. How's
Peter!
it going, man? Good to see you.
We were just playing the other game, the game.
You mean the one that starts with F and ends with an E that I will not partake in at all?
Whoa. What are we talking about?
That one.
Yeah. We're talking about Fart Night.
Oh,
fork knife. We're talking about fork knife.
My imagination went to a strange place.
Yeah. Yeah, it probably did.
I don't blame it.
Wow, the video audio is like spiking really hardcore sometimes. I don't know what's going on. All right. So there's the lead. So everybody's kind of popping in. So welcome, you guys. We are going to continue our purview into Sega and its consoles. We still have quite a few consoles to cover. We never really covered the 32X. I don't think we really covered... Did we cover the Sega CD? I don't think we covered that. Did we, Mike?
I don't think Mike's with us right now.
Oh, God, we lost Mike again. Holy crap.
Yeah.
All right, well, we were going to have a show for you guys, and that's it. Hi!
I really appreciate everybody coming out and all your opinions and,
There he is.
Oh, there
back
he is.
again. All right.
For some reason, and I think this is Video Ninja must be doing this because this never happens elsewhere. I am literally losing my internet connection.
Okay.
And it's only happening. It's only happening when I'm in a Video Ninja.
Maybe it's literally a ninja and it's murdering your internet.
I mean,
It could be.
Yes.
It could be.
I mean, I'm okay with it.
Wow.
Of course you are.
Nick's like, sucks to be you.
Right.
Pretty much. All right. So, again, the show for half of you guys is we were going to cover the remainder of pretty much Sega at this point. Brought in Sai, because Sai has quite a bit of experience, especially when it comes to Sega, when it comes to Saturn and Dreamcast. I think you did a lot of Game Gear and Genesis back in the day as well, didn't you, man?
We're doing Sega?
Yeah.
No, I'm just
We're
kidding.
doing Sega.
I have owned a couple of Sega consoles.
I imagine you have, yes.
That's true.
His
Sega. It's pronounced
favorite's
Sega.
probably going to be the 32X.
Sega. Yeah, 32X is where we stopped.
So, did we do Sega CD? I can't remember if we
did.
covered that effectively. Okay.
We did.
All right.
Sega CD.
Yes.
Do you have thoughts on this, Sai?
I love the Sega CD.
You too.
I
But
think we all enjoyed the Sega CD.
which
Hold on.
one do you own do y'all own the Sega CD or
I did.
do not
back
have
in the
one
day.
currently.
I don't own one now. I haven't owned one in years. I only had like a handful of games for it. I had a Sewer Shark. I had Lunar. I'm trying to remember.
Nice.
There was a couple others that I had on there that I can't recall off the top of my head. Those were the main two that stuck in my head.
Lunar had such a great soundtrack.
Why do
Yeah,
they
that game got
pronounce it-
confusing towards the end.
why do they pronounce it Lunar? What is that? I never understood that.
I don't know.
I mean, some people say Lunar.
I like how Nick just, I don't know. Like, cool. Thank you.
I don't care.
That's a good. We
Okay.
need more of
Give a
that in the community. We need more like honest. I don't knows. That would be great, right?
Or
I like
more,
that.
don't care. Moving on.
Right.
Your question is stupid, Cyrus. Let's move on.
Your question is stupid and you're stupid. Let's continue.
Yes, this thing that you brought up that you thought might generate a conversation, we're not into that. F you.
Welcome to the remainder of the night, Si.
Yeah, I've got a model.
It's like he's
T
never.
thing.
He's like he's never. Like he's never seen the show before.
I know.
I just listen to the show, and I don't listen very well.
That's okay. I don't either.
That's okay. Neither do I.
Carla! Good to see you.
Ah, look who it is. All right, hang on. I got to get the. I'm getting all the chats put in a place where I can actually see them.
Okay.
Is your microphone like doing some kind of auto gain thing or something?
I don't know what his mic is doing.
Yeah. Oh, so you know what? Let me take off the gate on it. I had a noise gate on it when I was before I had gotten these new headphones because my speakers are near my microphones and well they echo, so they don't echo anymore. But I tried to do a noise gate.
Uh-oh. What have we done?
Did we lose Mike again?
I think we lost him again.
Mike's down again.
Yeah. Everybody pour one out for Mike.
We need like a counter, like a WD counter, like, to 10 or something that we can just do every time he's down. Just say he's been like completely taken out at like 10 or 20 or something.
Yeah. Poor Mullis.
He's having a night, that's for sure. There he is.
Once again, this is happening. Oh, now I'm really loud. Hang on a second.
Yeah, your noise gate is really strong.
No, the noise gate's off now.
Okay.
The noise gate is for.
It's a little bit
turning.
better now than it was before.
Yeah,
you were spiking, like the video audio was spiking red constantly.
I am working on that now. Except I do have a compressor on. It's just not compressing. Now it should be. Okay, I should be good now.
Okay. That does sound a
but
little bit better.
I'm not sure why. But again, this happened last time. Just out of the blue, I get disconnected from my internet. I don't know why.
I don't look to me, man. I don't know. All
I
know is this seems to be turning more and more into an LG stream where we spend 30 minutes troubleshooting things.
Welcome to Mike's. Welcome to Mike. Welcome to Microphone Mullis.
Microphone Mullis. All right, hang on. I'm gonna open up. But no, this is different. This is you know how when you lose connection, your little Ethernet icon in the lower right corner turns into a globe. That's what's happening. So somehow Video Ninja is literally dropping my connection and then reconnecting it. So, anyhow.
So delete S if your My drivers are Sega CD compatible.
Good question, actually.
And he's just like, fatality.
Fatality.
All right. So let me see.
So this is going to be an interesting evening, guys.
Mike's voice sounds like 1993 Fox when you would hear the announcements for the cartoons and stuff. Like, it's
What the hell now? What the hell now?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Dude, he was moving the image around when I was trying to get him in place. My eyes started wigging out because the picture's moving and I'm moving him at the same time, and I'm like, oh no. And I've gone cross-eyed.
It won't go to the left. What's wrong? Why is it going to the right? What's happening? It's gone to the left. What's happening?
So, anyway, we're going to continue talking about some Sega, but we do want to catch up with everybody, see how the week's on, see what they've been doing and everything like that. So, Mike, what all have you been up to lately?
I've been fighting with this microphone or this internet connection for the last 20 minutes.
We're going to ignore the microphone for a little bit. What have you been doing outside of fighting with your microphone?
Well, playing games.
Okay. This is very specific. I'm riveted.
Well, unfortunately, I've been playing a lot of Fortnite lately. However, I don't know what to tell you, man. Peter and I are hooked.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's just I tried it ages ago. I didn't get into it, and there's so many people playing it now. I don't have any desire to get into it now. I just don't care.
The zero build makes a big difference. When you don't have to be a real estate agent, makes a huge difference.
I'm sure it probably does. Hey, Retsnom. How you doing, man?
Retsnom and JDA. Sorry, guys. I'm working on getting the
you've
chat.
Been behind on people coming in. We've been on top of it. We've said hi.
I know you have. Because I'm having freaking problems here.
Well, that's
I'm
your
having
problem.
I'm having issues here.
Yeah.
I'm having issues here.
Yep, it's a you problem, not an us problem.
Oh, well,
I think it's a
kind of is our problem.
Yeah, it kind of is. Okay.
You know what? There's nothing like microphone problems.
That sucks, Scrambles.
Microphone problems mixed with popcorn and like Mike just don't give a shit anymore. He's just like, I'm gonna do what I want.
whatever, I'll do what I want.
You don't know me. You don't know me.
I got these nice new headphones though. They're the outside the ear bone conduction headphones.
Oh, good. I'm sure they sound
never
fantastic.
messed with those.
They actually surprisingly sound good.
I bet this show would sound great through those headphones.
You know what else would sound really good through them?
Oh no!
Oh God! I can feel like all my subscribers like leaving.
That would be me.
I felt something terrible. As if, how many subscribers do you have? 1,260 subscribers.
I'm down to one.
And I'm not leaving you, Nick. I'm not leaving you, Nick.
Yeah,
Mike needs to turn off flash processing.
Vinny's mentioned this in a couple places, and I've seen this too.
Yes, I saw that today.
You guys are noticing a ton of delay. YouTube's been doing a little bit of shady stuff lately and putting like a 20% load on the CPU if you have an ad blocker on, which almost everybody I know, including myself, uses an ad blocker because I don't want to see the ads. They've also been getting super aggressive with inserting a lot of ads. I was watching a 20-minute video the other day, and I swear it had like 10 ads in it. It was kind of ridiculous. So Mike needs to turn off the blast processing.
Do they make
Scrambles is here.
popcorn?
He's diehard.
Do they make a popcorn noise blocker? I know there's an ad blocker.
You know, they need to. It needs to be a thing.
There's got to be a blocker for that somewhere. Just saying.
Sai, what have you been into lately, man? What have you been doing?
What have I been into? Wouldn't you like to know?
I mean, inquiring minds want to know. You're on 2 different platforms now. Let's go, son.
I'm playing RPGs, man. I'm playing Tales of Phantasia on Super Nintendo right now. And,
nice. I haven't played that one in ages.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever made it all the way through that one or got too deep into it.
Well, I would think that would probably be true because I ran into a little bit of an issue. I guess I'm probably about 6-7 hours in. And the English translation from DJAP from 2001 has a lot of risque material. Let's just say there was some stuff I had to edit out of the video before I could put it on YouTube.
Really now? Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that was in the translation. I was like, oh, so we're going there. All right.
Yeah. This is why there was no US version of this game.
Yeah. Well, let's just say when people ask me how come I don't stream those gameplay things, there's a reason. If it's a Japanese role-playing game that fans translated, yeah, we're not streaming that.
You could do that fine on Rumble. It would not be so kosher on YouTube. I don't think Rumble cares.
That's probably true. That's probably.
I don't think they care.
Funny enough, I don't think they do.
No, I don't think they do. At all.
I don't think they do either.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what else. I'll tell you what else they don't care about, and this is a cool thing. Saturday, I figured out how to on the Xbox, the Series X, to launch a music app so I can play music.
Yeah, Spotify. Yeah.
Well, not just Spotify. Apple Music does it too, and I think
okay.
Pandora does. The difference is, and this is where I think I'm going to use Spotify. Spotify I can control from my phone.
Yes.
So I can control but no, I mean on the Xbox, so I can control the play. You can't with Apple.
Okay. Yeah, I knew that about Spotify because I'll listen to Spotify while I'm out, like walking my dog or in my car, and I'll come home and it'll be on the last track that I just played in the car. So I know it's keeping track of what's going on. It's just not necessarily playing it because I've got the computer silenced while I'm here. What's up, Galaxy? How you doing, man? Good to see you. So
I don't know anything about these apps that you're talking about.
I honestly, I've more or less started going to that now because Apple keeps messing with my digital library and screwing it all up, and then when I try to clean it up, it tells me I don't own the music anymore, and so I've gotten kind of pissed with them. It's almost started putting me back to physical media. Matter of fact, I just bought a new Blu-ray player because mine died not that long ago, so I've been kind of like buying up some of my old childhood favorite cartoons, been wanting to get into some anime and start watching some physical media again. Which is funny that I start doing that as physical media starts to kind of finally die.
Well, yeah.
All these services screwing with them so much.
Yeah.
It's been very difficult for me to want to invest in them lately.
They're pulling them out of all the stores, like all the.
They are.
Sony just recently pulled a lot of content off of their store and out of people's library that owned it. If you didn't have it downloaded onto your drive, it was now gone. Even though you
and not just over here, but one of the largest UK retailers is now also dropping their physical as well.
Yeah. You can still get it, but you have to do it. You have to do it online and stuff like that. So like Amazon or finding it in a used store or something like that. Whatever. So we'll figure out a way for it. But anyway, I've been doing a couple of RPGs and things too. I finished up all of Ghost of Tsushima. I got the platinum on the main game, and then I got the gold on the expansion content. So
outstanding.
Everything on that.
No, you got to say
I wanted to finish.
You got to say outstanding.
Yeah.
You got to do
flawless victory.
So in
that's great.
that, I had started Final Fantasy IV again. I bought the Pixel remaster of that, so I've been having some fun going through that again because I've been forever since I played that game. And I forgot how easy it is if you're not just playing it straight through to get lost in where you're at because there's no log in any of these old RPGs to tell you, hey, dummy, it's been like 3 weeks since you last played this. This is where you were at. They just didn't do that then because they expected it to be the only game you were playing. I also picked up R-Type Final 3 of Vault, which is a
you were telling me about that.
And that's been both fun and kind of a bummer at the same time. It's been fun in the fact that it's been nice to have a shmup, and it's been nice to kind of get a little bit better at R-Type, and I stress little. It's also been a bit boring because there's a lot of just going through the same stages over and over and over again. And unlike something like Ninja Gaiden, where you know exactly kind of where you screwed up and you can try different things to adjust where you're at, it feels like there's enough randomness in there that sometimes you just die for like no apparent purpose, or something gets fired at a weird time and then you fail that way. And so learning the stages in this is a lot harder than it is on other game types. And maybe it's just that I'm not as much of a shooter player as I might like to be. I don't know. It's been fun. I've gotten decently far in some of the stages. I think I've made it through maybe about 12 total of the 20 some odd stages in there. There's 2 paths. They're both 7 stages. I've made it to stage 6 on both the first 2 routes on normal, but I haven't finished any of the stage 6s on there. And stage 6 and 7 is where it starts to get a lot more stages because there's these objects you pick up that determine your next stage. So it'll either be like 6-1, 6-2, 6-3, 6-4, and the same thing for stage 7, and apparently they all have different endings, at least in Final 2. Of all 3, just seems to be 7 stages in total. And I'm really kind of struggling with those last couple of stages to get anywhere. And the earlier stages, some of those are just a nightmare for me mechanically to figure out what to do, and I end up burning a bunch of continues trying to do that. But other than that, I've been coming up with new ideas for the channel to kind of bring new things to the table this year. So things are going to start to get a little bit more erratic on the channel for a little while as I start to figure out menu flow, menu pace. But some of the things I wanted to kind of introduce to you guys tonight that I kind of wanted to get into is I want to start covering more like just like game series history, like Ninja Gaiden, Mario, etc., that kind of stuff. I had a few ideas of one-offs, like how cinematics change stories, evolution of series. Will kind of continue like I did the evolution of platforming, and then I did the evolution of fighting games. I want to do some more of those this year. I want to do kind of one on controllers, how those evolved through the years. Various different ones on handhelds individually, and how they just kind of evolved through the years, that kind of thing, going all the way up to the Steam Deck and the more recent ones. Those are just some of the ideas, and then I have some more kind of where it kind of gets interesting and more long term. It's going to be kind of a multi-part thing. Is some of the deeper topics I kind of want to cover, where the idea behind this isn't to formulate a main opinion. It's to give you a case for and against, and then ask for your guys' engagement. And then following that up, I want to also do a live show focused around that, where the panel will change each time one of these comes up, depending on who wants in on the discussion and who I think will fit the discussion, right? And then probably have a wrap-up video of everything that was discussed between the panel and the original video, kind of wrapping that up and hinting at the next one. So some of the ideas that I had were voice actors versus full actors in video games, remakes and remasters versus new IPs, game preservation methods, some of the stuff we've already covered on RetroRoots, but it would be interesting to do it in a more pros and cons and maybe have some trivia and scenarios set up for people to discuss on the panel to make it a little bit more focused. Physical media licensed versus ownership. Is digital really ownership? Is physical really ownership? AI in video games, uses and handicaps. What keeps a long-running series fresh? Mods in video games, good, bad? How much did the devs owe the fan base for the mods that are made? Things like that. So there's quite a few of these so far that I have like rough ideas for that I need to do more digging into to form the context of the discussion that'll be introduced, that'll come into the live stream. And then another thing I have going on is I'm completely reorganizing this room, which is taken away from a lot of my editing time. Happy birthday. It's not my birthday.
Maybe it is.
It's not yet.
Happy birthday.
Oh, you going
Mr.
weird on me.
Geekstorian. Come on, man. Just roll with it.
Do I need to roll with this? I feel like you're getting creepy on me.
You know who should wish him a happy birthday now?
Uh-oh.
Sai.
Uh-oh.
Your other friend.
I don't know who you're talking about. I think you're crazy. I think you're a crazy person.
His birthday is a
certainly
conspiracy.
have no idea who you could be talking about. You could be talking about anybody on the internet. I don't know who you could be referring to. By the way, happy birthday, Nick. 45 years already. I can't believe it. Tell us, do you remember back when the first video games came out, back when you were about, 15? You're about 15 when the first video game came out?
Yes. I predate Dirt.
That's right. I got one question for you. You talking about doing all these deep dives and going into stuff. Explain to me, why the hell does a flower make somebody throw fireballs? Explain this to me. I've been wanting to know this. I can't understand this. Nobody will give me a straight answer. Come on.
Heartburn. It's very simple.
Yeah. When you eat it. Yeah.
You get heartburn.
I think you're crazy. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
So yeah, there'll be more streams and stuff coming on. I want to do some live streams, like a decade in trivia show where you take like a year out of a decade and just go over to like games, books, movies, how one might have discussed how one might have influenced the other, kind of what was going on the scene then that might have influenced what people were thinking about when they made certain things. It's kind of something
I got a question, Nick.
Go ahead.
Here's a request. Why did they never make a game based on the Super Mario Brothers movie? You know how they did Street Fighter, the movie, the game?
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't do that. Maybe
Come on,
because
Bob
maybe because
Hoskins.
it,
Bob
I would
Hoskins
say
in a
it's
game.
because the
that'd be
movie did horribly, but I think the Street Fighter movie did horribly as well, and it still got a game. So I have no idea.
I don't think there's a good
honestly,
excuse. I really don't.
I don't know that there is an excuse. It's not my job to make excuses for Nintendo.
All right, I like this.
They don't sponsor this channel.
I like the new Nick. This new Nick he's got attitude. He's got pizzazz. I like this.
Pizzazz.
Happy birthday.
This man has moxie.
Yeah. So anyway, I've got a new desk coming in, so the whole room's going to get rearranged to get the new desk in, which will hopefully make it a little bit more conducive and a little bit nicer to look at. When I'm streaming, I might be able to actually show the background a little bit instead of always having a green screen. It should be easier to set up the green screen as well, so it should just probably make everything a little bit easier. So all those things are kind of coming down the pipeline. And as we're almost already 30 minutes into the show, we should probably actually start talking about the topic at some point tonight.
I guess.
So we're going to go ahead and start with, I think, you guys want to start with the 32X, or do you want to start with the handhelds and go to the Game Gear?
Anyway,
Sai is our guest. We can start with the Game Gear. I
love the Game Gear. I have a Game Gear.
I had the Game Gear. I loved it.
Yeah,
I had a blast with it.
It's a portable Master System. It's badass.
Yeah, and it actually did a lot of things. I thought its version of Mortal Kombat was really, really, really good. I thought Sonic on it was really solid. I thought Chacon, the Forever Man, was actually really solid on that one. Shinobi was amazing on that one.
Oh, yeah.
All the different ninjas.
Yeah, there's different versions of Shinobi.
Mm-hmm.
Call it the Master System. The Game Gear can do some awesome stuff, dude. Sonic is good on the Game Gear, you know?
Sonic actually is quite impressive on the Game Gear, but it was also quite impressive on the Master System.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's very, very similar to the Game Gear version, just different screen.
Well, because the Game Gear also had blast processing. We know this.
Yes, it did.
I gotta move.
Back. This is not NLG. We have topics here.
Yeah.
3.58 megahertz. Something.
I'm gonna have to get everything rearranged because some of these images I forgot where I put the actual chat window.
Game Gear
so
had stereo sound. Game Gear had stereo.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Not many 8-bit systems had stereo sound. I mean, Game Boy had stereo sound.
No, and you got to think when this thing initially came out, the only other handheld that was out at the time that had color was effectively the Lynx. I think it came out slightly before the Game Gear came out. But most people...
Turbo Express was out, right?
Did the Turbo Express come out then? I thought that one came out around like 89 or 90, I want to say.
Yeah, the Game Gear came out.
Game Gear was like 90, I want to say, but the Lynx I thought was like 89 or so.
Yeah, Lynx was before Game Gear, and so I thought Turbo Express was before Game Gear too.
So here's my question about the Turbo Express.
Yes.
Do we consider that a handheld because it played?
What are you trying to say? Was the Nomad a handheld?
I guess because it played
like the
Nomad. Like I don't know.
I call the Nomad a handheld.
Look,
it's just a handheld Genesis. That's just a handheld TurboGrafx.
You know, we need to move past all these labels in this community. Everybody just wants to label everything.
Dude, I'm doubling down on labels. What are you talking about?
All right, so Turbo Express came out in 1990.
Okay.
Game Gear, and I'm getting Microsoft Bing points for this while I'm looking this up, by the way.
Oh my god. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, somebody's got to pay for my Game Pass.
Zombie's like, I'm a masochist. I enjoy Chacon on the Genesis and Game Gear. Now, the Genesis version of Chacon is brutal.
Yes, but I loved it.
It's a beautiful game to look at, but it's incredibly hard to play.
Right. TurboGrafx came out in 1990 and I'm only talking US. Game Gear came out in 91.
Hey, Easy Pro Wrestling Comics. Good to see you, man.
Lynx was in 89, right?
Hey, Easy.
I'd have to look it up. I don't know right off the top of my head. It's been a while since I looked up the date.
All right, I'm getting there.
I want to say 89 and I want to say 90 for the Game Gear.
You guys, give me a second.
Well, he just said
1990. 89 in North America.
Okay.
So 89 in North America.
Okay, Lynx
I love
89, Turbo Express 90,
90,
Game Gear 91.
Okay, I thought the Lynx was the first one with color that came out.
Yeah, it was. How about that? That's
There you
interesting.
go.
16-bit in 1989 with color, and then a screen was not. I mean, the resolution on the screen is really bad for the Lynx, but it's a good system. It's just
I didn't think the Lynx was 16-bit. I knew the TurboGrafx one was supposed to be the TurboGrafx.
No, the Lynx is 16-bit.
Is it?
It is.
Is it?
It is. It absolutely is.
This is another one of those where you try to tell me like the same thing, like the Intellivision is 16-bit, but looks worse than an Atari, and then you try to tell me that this is 16-bit and it looks like 4-bit.
Dude, not only is the Lynx 16-bit, it has built-in hardware scaling and rotation.
Yeah, it
would have been nice if they did something with that, because most of the games I've seen on that thing
there's
worth
games
the
that
price
do
of
that.
entry.
No, like Blue Lightning. There's several games. What is that? Cop, Electro Cop, or whatever it's called.
Yep. Okay, so
hey Ruby,
if we're going to be honest with each other,
Warbirds. That's another one.
Wait, we're going to do that tonight? I don't think anybody's prepared for that.
I know.
Tobey Maguire. That's right. Tobey Maguire did the commercials for. That's right.
Technically,
Uh-oh.
the Lynx had an 8-bit chip, but it had a 16-bit, had an 8-bit CPU. It had a 16-bit blitter and a 16-bit CMOS.
Do you think that chewing popcorn gives you more authority to your statement?
I feel like he thinks it does at some point.
It's like, I'm so confident in what I'm about to say.
You know what?
Vinny's thrown down the gauntlet here. The Lynx is indeed 16-bit in the same vein that the Jaguar is 64.
Oh. Oh.
Oh, that's been thrown.
How dare you, Vinny? Vinny, you're off my Christmas list.
You're also off my Hanukkah list, Vinny.
Oh, wow. I hope you brought something for Nick's birthday.
Tom and Jerry spent so much time fighting, they never got to 64 bits.
That's a good point. They fight.
So those guys that don't know, the Tom and Jerry processor was the one for the Jaguar system that was supposed to be two 32-bit processors running across a 64-bit bus, which allowed it to do 64-bit graphics. In theory, making it the first 64-bit console, though each processor individually was only 32 bits. They had to work in parallel in order to try to hit 64 bits.
Right.
So not everybody really bought that it was a 64-bit system. There was a lot of discussion there.
I don't believe in your globalist lies.
So, now that we've discussed Atari...
And now that I'm going to choke on the pop. This was your plan the whole time. If Mullis chokes on the popcorn, he won't eat it.
Hey, remember that time Mullis died on Nick's show?
Good
That was
times.
crazy. That was crazy, man.
The ratings were great. We need to do that more often.
Hey, bring Mike back so we can kill him again on our show.
Next week, Mike will die of electrocution.
Yay!
He's changing his name to Kenny.
It's the itchy and scratchy show. Oh, wait, damn it, back did it in the, okay.
Wow, this thing had a lot more shows and movies than I thought. Child's Play 3, apparently, according to the chat.
Oh, yeah, the Game Gear had a great library.
It had a really good library. I mean, if you liked Sega, there was no reason that you wouldn't like the Game Gear, except for the fact that it only lasted maybe 2 hours on 6 AA batteries and then it was dead.
Look, let's be honest. Everybody had an AC adapter. Come on.
Oh, yeah. No, it would almost always... I used it more in my house than I did anywhere else because it would die at the drop of a hat if you used it outside. You needed it plugged into a wall through an AC adapter.
Fun fact. It uses the same AC adapter as the Genesis Model 2. Did you know that? I only know that because I
not know that.
Here we lay Mike down in the dirt to become RetroRoots.
Nice, JDA. It's outstanding. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, you're right, Zombie. In Enemy of the State with Gene Hackman, they used the Turbo Express to like it was some kind of high tech.
What?
I remember that now. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
remember that
Yeah,
in
there's a
Enemy of
lot
the
of
State.
weird-
I have to go back and
there's-
watch that now.
Hollywood does a lot of. They'll take silly things and use them as like props. And if you're really got good eyes for it, you can watch the movie enough. You're like, wait a minute.
Dude, all I care about is that Gene Hackman touched a Turbo Express. That's all. I'm like, hell yeah, that's the commercial. Just show this. Show the clip from the movie. Turbo Express. Gene Hackman. That's the
Gene
commercial.
Hackman. Hello, I'm Lex Luthor, and when I'm doing my crime,
When I'm out here,
use
I'm Gene Hackman, and when I'm making movies, I'm playing whatever this thing is that they're making me hold.
Right.
They're making me old.
What do you have? What do you have, Otis? I have a Game Boy.
I have whatever this is, and it's clearly superior.
This thing is good. That plays the whatever. Shut
Whatever
up!
it
Give me
is,
my
yeah.
money. Yeah.
Right. Miss Tessbucker, bring me my Game Gear.
As long as the Turbo Express doesn't fly to that certain island. Oh, I'm not even going there. Nope. Walking away from that one. Walking away from that one.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll save that joke for Rumble.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're technically on. I'm sure YouTube's going to say it. I dare you. Say it.
Right. And it's Sam Kinison voice. Say it! Please! I've got the button right here. Hold on, John. Nick's about to say we can cancel the channel now. I got right here.
Oh, God. People are dropping like flies on the platform, too. It's crazy. Anyway, so this
my
came
God.
out
All right.
basically to be direct competition to the Game Boy that was huge at the time. And I think the Game Boy
Correct.
Color came out a little bit after this came out. Not necessarily in response to this, but was kind of like the next evolution of the Game Boy.
Well, because
franchise,
people needed
right?
color and a backlit screen in order to enjoy the Game Boy.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I enjoyed it
so-
plenty without the backlit screen and the dot matrix like screen that I had. You just needed very specific lighting, but I used the hell out of my Game
Right.
Boy.
Like
I
the
also
sun.
used the hell out of my Game Gear.
Right. I had my Game Gear. I had one of those light things that shined over top of it to try to light the screen. You know, that plugged into the top and sucked out half the battery life.
No, I had one of those for the Game Boy. I didn't really suck out like half the battery.
Dude,
life,
there
I don't
was
feel
a-
like, but
There was a huge library for the Game Gear.
there was quite a bit for the Game Gear. Yeah, they were almost for a while. They were almost one-to-one translating anything that would go over to the Master System over to the Game Gear because
Yeah,
it
but
wasn't that big of a move.
No, but you're right. But where the Game Gear overshot the Master System was that third parties got very involved in the Game Gear.
Oh,
Acclaim.
definitely.
Yeah, handheld
Acclaim.
gaming was becoming a big thing in the late 80s, early 90s. And everybody wanted in on that market, but not everybody wanted to play Nintendo's pool. And Nintendo was and
Right.
still is, was until the smartphone really took over the market, the handheld of choice for almost everybody. It sold the most, straight up.
I gotta say, another way the Game Gear was better than the Master System.
Try to play NES with Judas Guitars.
The D-pad on the controller is actually really good on the Game Gear. And
Yes.
Yeah.
the Master System has struggled with that.
That rounded.
Yeah,
that rounded
the Master
D-pad.
System D-pad always looked kind of funky because it almost looked like you had almost like four triangles like inserted and they all moved sort of independently, but they didn't look like they were very responsive in any way. It
Well,
kind of reminded me a lot of the ABS, like Nintendo's first foray to try to get their console over.
Yeah.
The controller looked kind of funky like that.
There's a couple of variants on Master System D-pads. One of them has a hole in the middle where you can screw a little tiny
Yes,
joystick.
yes, I've seen that.
They're okay. They're not fantastic. They're okay. But the Game Gear D-pad's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good. And you know what I always thought was interesting was they had to make the controls on the handhelds really solid because they knew you couldn't replace that easily, you know?
Right.
So
right.
it's I think pretty much every major handheld has really good controls for that sort of thing, except maybe the Nintendo Switch. But most all the other ones.
Yeah, the Switch, I don't know where their concept of trying to use... well, I know where the concept came from because they've done it before, but using buttons as a D-pad is not a great solution. I thought we had already proven that out like ages ago, but apparently they decided to reuse that old idea from their old...
they had some trouble. They had trouble with their sticks drifting and stuff, and they finally...
Everybody did. And pretty much everybody. PlayStation had that problem. PlayStation 5 has that problem. Xbox has that problem. They all have that problem. It's just
I have many Xbox controllers. I do not have a drift problem.
Do you have a drift problem?
I don't own any of the controllers I own, including my Nintendo controllers, but that doesn't mean that they don't have problems. They've been reported, man. I don't know what to tell you. It's fact. So too many people have reported it.
I have not seen this mass reporting. Not like the Switch. The Switch has been massively reported. I have not seen mass reports of PlayStation 5 and Xbox controllers.
Well,
I have. But okay.
Well, aren't you special?
Oh, wow. It is his birthday. So he is special.
Suck it.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying.
That gives him... Hey, I was right eating popcorn. I guess he can try to be right eating on his birthday.
I don't think that two wrongs make a right. What is...
I feel like if I beat you over the head with enough wrongs, it becomes the right thing to do.
Well, it is your show, Nick.
There you go.
Speaking of one of the wrongs.
Oh.
So I'm going to go ahead and move us to...
We're losing you. Mullis, you're losing your internet again. Something's happening.
Because we briefly talked about the Game Gear, and there's not a lot to say about the Game Gear other than it was a really solid handheld by Sega that didn't get the market penetration it probably deserved, because Nintendo continued to dominate that market and outpace it. So it lasted till, I want to say, close to the end of the Genesis, and then it was pretty much retired, and I never really saw them jump back into the handheld market again unless you count the VMUs. That was pretty much the end of that as far as they go. Well, with the exception of like the Nomad, right, which we'll talk to, but that's not kind of next in the main timeline, right?
Yeah.
But the Nomad was more or less an extension of the Genesis when it really boils down to it.
Nomad and 32X have a lot in common in that respect. You know, they came out at that same period where Sega
they came
was
out really late in the console's lifespan.
Yeah.
32X came out pretty much very right on the launch date, at least in Japan, of the Sega Saturn.
Of the Saturn, yep.
Yeah, isn't that weird? What a weird story, you know?
Yeah, I mean...
That is the most bizarre story.
It's one of those things where Sega Japan wanted something to ease people into the 32-bit era. They didn't want them to have to go cold turkey, so they specifically went to Sega of America and said, hey, we want you to make something that will make the Genesis compatible with 32-bit games so that we can ease people in at a lower price point into 32-bit era while we get the Saturn ready for its launch. And they were like, okay, we don't necessarily think this is the best of ideas, but if this is what you want us to do, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so in about 6 to 8 months, they had come out with the design and everything for the 32X.
Right.
The 32X was the KY jelly that was supposed to ease in. No, never mind, though.
Well,
you're not completely wrong.
And you know what's really funny?
You're not completely wrong. Let's be fair.
Right. It was. They weren't even concerned with Nintendo. They were concerned with Atari and with 3DO. They thought the Jaguar was going to take off. And they thought the 3DO was going to take off. And Kalinsky, for the most part, one of his, and I read this in an interview he did with, some game vlog a while back. He tried to convince Sega of Japan that no one was going to buy the 3DO because of the price. They didn't care. Because the 3DO was more expensive than the Saturn.
Yeah, the 3DO
Jaguar
was insanely expensive.
It was insanely priced. And the Jaguar was not proven at all. And he truly thought he could get one more year out of the Genesis, and then move people to the Saturn.
It's a damn shame because that 32X is actually really good. Like, it can do some really good, decent stuff.
Yeah, and there's some stuff that it arguably does better than the Saturn because of how it processes things. So it wasn't necessarily a bad piece of kit. Its biggest problem is when it launched, they launched it the same time in Japan that they launched it in the States, which was one day before the Saturn launched in Japan.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where I start to point the finger at the beginning of the end of the love letter between Kalinsky and Sega. Mostly because Sega of Japan was listening to Kalinsky less and less. And then by the time they got this thing out and they got this thing launched, it completely got overshadowed by the launch of the Saturn, which had the same launch title of Virtual Fighter, but it was a much better version on the Saturn than it was on the 32X. Not that the 32X version was bad. And nobody bought one. And so Japan, being Japan, as they've been for many, many years, which is just now started to really change in the market, always took Japan's opinion as the opinion. So since nobody was really investing in the 32X in Japan, most of the major support for the 32X in the United States would kind of fizzled out very quickly because nobody was making any games for it because they all wanted to work on the Saturn. And so it was only people that they could, Western developers and stuff that they could get to work for it, that would work on it for the States. So the States had this for like almost a year with like maybe 12 games? 20 games?
Yeah. Wasn't much.
No, it wasn't much.
Nick, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
I really want to get your thoughts on this. I've heard this, and you know more than I do about the history. You're the geek historian, after all. You know the history more than
I may or may not, but go ahead.
You know more than Mullis for sure,
Vince.
and I'm not asking.
Wow! Shots fired. Holy crap.
I mean, let's be honest. Mullis is here for the eye candy.
Is he though?
So, but
yes, I am. Just deal with that, birthday boy.
What I had heard was that Sega of Japan, at least some of the executives, actually resented like Kalinsky. Like they
big time.
There was this major like political like
they hated his entire game plan. When he came in, he kind of went by the numbers. He's like, look, we've got to do this, we've got to do this, we've got to do this, and I detail all that out. Because I made a Genesis video where Kalinsky kind of came out with his plan, right? Like, you have to. They didn't like the idea of his heavy-handed advertising campaign. Japan's culture found that offensive, but he's like, look, this will work.
Because the commercials were like edgy and
right. And he wanted to change the age group. He wanted to bring a mascot out to combat with Mario, which they weren't sure was going to work at all. A lot of his ideas were contrary to Japanese culture at the time, which is funny because Japanese culture in business, even around this time, is some of the most cutthroat, cloak and dagger crap that has ever been done in business. They are so cutthroat. But they do it under this facade of this part's honorable. No.
Yeah.
No,
Dude,
you literally
totally
just stabbed him in the spine like 25 times. There was nothing honorable about that.
Yeah. and they all did it to each other, but we kind of get fixated on what Nintendo did, but let's be honest, they all
did it, man.
Yeah.
They were all doing it all the time. Nintendo was one of the
good night,
most
Brother Vince.
public. Night, Vince.
Yeah, take care, man.
Nintendo was one of the most well-known about it, but like they all did it. It was not an uncommon thing to do in business practice.
You know, Nick, it's funny you say this. So when the Genesis was big in the United States, the Mega Drive was not doing very well in Japan.
No,
right?
it was actually behind the PC Engine.
Yeah.
Nintendo was first. Yeah. PC Engine was very close to it, and the Mega Drive was a distant third. It was not doing well in Japan. Its main market was the United States and Europe. Honestly, it did really well in Europe, for the most part, because they were bigger on arcades, and Sega was a bigger name in the arcades than Nintendo was. So Sega always had a bit of an edge in Europe because of that. They were more well known. The Master System in particular did much better in Europe.
Okay,
than,
so this is
than the
yeah,
NES.
this is what I want to get to. So there's a vastly different culture, like you were saying, in Japan than in the United States, and it's a culture not just in business but also in the tastes of the audience. And if you look at the Sega Saturn versus the Mega Drive, right? The Sega Saturn didn't do very well in the United States. It just didn't. Okay.
No.
But
No,
it did
for
it did
myriad of reasons.
right. Well, okay.
There
yeah,
were a couple
fair
really
enough.
big reasons the Saturn plummeted here,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about that. But
Right. I just want to point out that the culture, when you look at the games that are on the Saturn, okay, you look at the games that are on the Genesis, because I mean, there's your success in the United States, the Genesis, right? There's a huge difference in the style and the focus of games. Like if you know, the Genesis is more action, sports,
well, that was also by design. The sports angle
yeah.
was clearly meant to get an older age group, the teenage age group, to the young adult age group interested in video games.
Not just that, but an American audience.
Well,
So
this is
remember
what-
remember
that's
what
all
happened. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to finish my thought real quick. All I was saying was there was just this, if you play Saturn games, it's a total different, like it feels like a completely different world. Pun Saturn. It's a different world. You know what I mean?
In some ways, yes.
And so you can see like Japanese consoles that do well have a certain style to them. And Saturn has that similarity to the PC Engine and, the Famicom and stuff. There's like this certain style to the type of games and the gameplay and the overall, like just the way things feel that you didn't really have with the Genesis, because the Genesis was more, like you said, a Western appeal, a Western audience designed for that, because that's where their money was, right?
It still had plenty of Japanese influence in a lot of the titles, but it still suffered from the same problem of Nintendo having a stranglehold on most game titles. If it released on Nintendo console,
Well, that's a very good
couldn't
point.
be on any other console. So Sega again was kind of limited with the number of partners that they had, but they did a much better job of building and changing the market with the Genesis, primarily because of Kalinsky, right? He came up with a whole game plan to help them close that gap with Nintendo. And had they stayed with that game plan and really focused on continuing to hit there and to broaden their audience outside of just focusing on the Japan aesthetic and thought process on what a video game should be, and have focused more globally, they eventually would have come up to right up to where Nintendo was, particularly since Nintendo was busy starting to make mistakes with a partnership with Sony that would dissolve, and then working with Philips to come up with the CDI, and then Sony coming out, which was also part of the Saturn's problem with the PlayStation.
Yeah, well, the Genesis was ahead of Nintendo. They were ahead for a little while, right? Like they had caught up and then actually surpassed Nintendo.
Mike, you could talk to this. The Spider-Man game on the 32X.
Circle
of Fire or something like that.
Wait, what game are we talking about? What?
Hold on.
He's gonna go get it.
Yeah, he's absolutely gonna go get it.
Like, does he have to get it every time this gets brought up?
Yes.
Is this like,
Damn right I do.
Yes.
You're damn right I do.
how much is this game worth, Mola? How much is it?
This is, if you give me a second, I'll look and tell you. It's typically around 1,300 to 1,500.
That is.
In this condition, by the way. This is in as
That's
mint
almost
of
as
condition.
much as a Intellivision homebrew game.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
There's a couple that are a little overpriced, but mostly those are good.
Yeah.
Anyway, dude, how have you kept that all these years in that good a condition? Do you keep it?
I don't play it.
But you keep breaking it out
He
every
doesn't want to play it. Let's put it that way. He's got it.
The game is garbage. That's why I don't take it out of the box ever.
Yeah, it's in really good shape because he never touches it because he doesn't want
I
to
never
play
touch
Do
it.
you even own a 32X? Oh wait, what am I keep asking these questions.
Jeez. Here we go again.
This is like T-ball. This is like
I
T-ball.
know. I know, right? There we
Yes,
go.
I own a
Yeah,
32X.
he still got 32X.
All right, fine.
So how many
I'm not
power
going back
how many
over there.
power strips do you have to connect all this up, guys? You got to keep in mind the Genesis
yes.
the Genesis Tower of Power, as they called it, was a thing of ridiculousness.
Yes,
and
it did.
I kind of
Yes, it
wish I
was.
had a good picture of it, but you needed at minimum 2 power strips because the Genesis had a brick power plug.
Right.
The Sega CD had a brick power plug.
Had a brick.
Yeah.
And the 32X had a brick power plug to power it as well. And if you really wanted to get the most out of the 32X, you needed all the components because there were 32X CD games as well
That's true.
that used the 32X to
Dude.
process some stuff in the Sega CD to run a lot of the FMV.
Nick, let me ask you another question. And Mullis, I'm curious. I'm very, very curious about your thoughts on this one. So I'm not neglecting you. What was the strategy of the Sega CD? Like, I like the Sega CD. I think it's cool, but it had so much potential. And it seemed to me like the focus was full motion video.
Hey, Rob.
Like, am I right about that? Like, what was the...
So
That seemed to be a
partially.
lot of the games that I
That
saw,
was-
yeah.
that was part of it, yes. There was one good thing that they did with the Sega CD, and there was one big mistake that they did with the Sega CD. So the good things with the Sega CD were faster processor than the Genesis, so it could run those games. It could run a full motion video. The full motion video was at the time revolutionary. Night Trap, Sewer Shark, Ground Zero Texas, all which I have. And it did the built-in sprite scaling and rotation that the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 did. The mistake that they made, and it doesn't dampen the fact that the Sega CD is my favorite Sega system, believe it or not.
Wow. Really?
It really is. It's Sega CD. I mean, the Dreamcast
use a lot of the rotation, FMV, and all that too.
What was that? Say that again,
Was it
Nick?
Silpheed or
Silpheed.
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 That's it.
I say the
So
same
what's-
thing. Why do I say
Yeah.
that? Nick,
Silpheed.
where do we get that from? Why
I
do
don't
we
know,
say-
man. I just say it wrong all the time.
No, I do every time. Why?
Yeah, Silpheed did a trick of sprites over top of full motion video.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked
That's
really
how
good.
they pulled that off.
Astron Belt did the same thing back
Didn't
in
it
the
have-
80s
Yeah.
on
Didn't Sophie have
Laserdisc.
polygon stuff, or is that just digitized?
It was digital sprites over full motion video.
Yeah, they actually did a lot of different techniques in that. They did full motion video like they did on the Laserdisc with Astron Belt. They did pixelated graphics, but they also did sprite scaling too. So
Yes.
they were using like
okay.
a combination of all those techniques inside that one game, which
That
is
game-
kind
It-
of like
it is a-
technically really cool.
Yeah.
It was an absolute showpiece for the Sega CD.
There's a couple of games that really show what that system is capable of. Like that's one. What's that
That's
one?
one.
Soulstar. You ever play
Soulstar.
I don't
Soulstar's
think I ever
another.
played Soulstar. I had a pretty limited Sega CD library when it really boiled down to it. I think.
I burn all
honest,
my discs. I have Sega CD, and I just burn all the discs. So
I have my Sega CD, my games on the shelf. At this point, I emulate it because I don't want to go out and buy a
emulation
Sega
is fun.
CD.
Yeah.
I don't want to go out and buy a Sega CD where the, where the laser is going to die out on me quickly.
Mullis, you know what? You know what's a cool thing to do with your Sega CD? They make hacked ROMs that you can play a CD soundtrack from the Sega CD while you're playing the game, like Streets of Rage, Ninja Turtles. There's several.
Oh,
of them out
nice.
there. And you can do it on the
Nice.
emulator too. Yeah,
Nice.
you
I have
should
to
look
check
into
that out.
Yeah, you should look into it.
The reason that I always called the Sega CD my favorite system, and the Dreamcast is like literally paper thin underneath of it, is, and there you go, Soul Feast, was when I first got it, and it had Soul Feast, and it had Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and it had the triple was it Golden Axe, Columns, and Streets of Rage.
Yeah.
When I put Soul Feast in, it was the same game graphically as Soul Deist, the Genesis version. But when that soundtrack hit, it was a different game.
Yeah, that was the big thing with CDs. That was the major advancement of them. Other than more storage space, it was really the audio quality.
Well, and there were some things again. The addition of the driving scenes to Batman Returns, which took a very, very mid-level, underwhelming side scroller and put some amazing driving scenes in it, to the point that you could actually play the game with just driving scenes. There were games like BC Racers. There were games that actually combined full motion video with sprites, like Dracula, which wasn't a great game, but it looked amazing. And then you had
as we have a 32X on the screen and we go right back to the Sega CD.
I know, but there are reasons. Final Fight CD,
and my Saturn's on the screen too. Don't forget.
I know.
What are they talking about?
We're gonna try to get there at some point tonight.
We're gonna get there. Final Fight CD is still the best version of Final Fight. So that's why the mistake that they made with the Sega CD, they tried to bring it back to the 32X. They tried to resolve with the 32X when they put the chips in, and that was to boost the color palette. The Sega CD's big issue was it still could only push 64 colors on the screen at the time, which is why all the full motion video games looked as crappy as they did.
I'll be honest, most full motion video games around this time didn't look great. If you go back and you look at stuff like Myst, it's kind of limited in its own way, and that's early FMV and a lot of that too. But FMV had a lot of limitations because you're trying to do motion video. FMV standing for full motion video, for anybody out there who doesn't know what we're talking about when we say FMV, didn't really work well on a CD format. It really didn't start to come into its own on a CD format till you started to really hit DVD, right? That's when,
true.
That's when a
Although
lot of your real motion videos started to work. Now you could do 3D graphics and stuff on CD, and they did a lot of good work there, but not with real actors and real scenes as well.
The cartoon ones did really well.
The cartoon ones worked better because
Cobra
they could
Command,
work more effectively with that palette.
Cobra Command and Road Avenger were two of the top FMV games, honestly, on the Sega CD. Next to Sewer Shark. Don't get me wrong, Sewer Shark actually was done really well, and I will tell you, the Sega CD version,
I enjoyed Sewer Shark. I know a lot of people didn't like it and call it much
love
of a game.
it.
I
would go back and play it. I actually prefer it over the 3DO version, because even though the 3DO version has a larger full motion video screen and better quality full motion video, the way they did the directions is much worse, and if you're not paying attention, you miss it a lot.
That's interesting. I had never thought about that. That's
go back, because I know you have a 3DO, don't you, Si?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Go back and play Sewer Shark on the 3DO, and then play it on the Sega CD.
So it's like I can see Marky Mark topless.
Marky Mark, yeah. Those were interesting too. Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. There was CNC Music Factory. Those were interesting games where you can make your own music videos.
Yeah, and Galaxy, I'm not saying that full motion video was bad on PC. It was definitely better than it was on the consoles at the time. It just still had its limitations at the time. It was just a product of the era and them moving in that direction. That's all.
Jaguar XJ220. I mean, there were great games on there. The other issue that they ran into was, instead of developers going in and really doing new and different things, a lot of the games on the Sega CD were just ports of Genesis games with better soundtracks. Now, with the 32X, they tried to even bring in CD games if you had the Sega CD, and it did better.
Right.
The interesting thing about the 32X, and this is what people tend to forget about that, it had the same chipset as the Saturn. It simply ran at a lower clock speed. What they did to try to fool people into thinking the whole thing was 32-bit was they would use the 32X for like sprites and things like that, stuff they could rotate in and out and scale and stuff, and they'd use the Genesis for backgrounds, which is why there are many games that, if you remember, there was a video cable that went from the back of the 32X to the back of the Genesis, and if you unplug that, games like
I love how Si's just popping up the right pictures.
I'm producing. I'm your producer, man.
He's got
I
it.
want credit.
Oh, here we go. This will
you go.
work better. There we go.
So, if you played a game like Primal Fury, and you unplug the AV out from the
Primal Rage.
Primal Rage, thank you. From there, the backgrounds would disappear.
Yeah.
Because the Genesis was doing the backgrounds. The other thing was the Genesis typically did most of the soundtrack work, so you still had that FM sound, and then the 32X would make a couple of nice sound effects. But then, not many games actually utilized the 32X to its full potential either. You had games like, and Zombies talking about, the Zombie mentioned Sonic 2 and Sonic Knuckles into a game Genie, the 32X, blah, blah, blah. But like Knuckles Chaotix, which, by the way, another issue was there was no mainline Sonic game for the 32X. There was no mainline Sonic game for the Saturn. There was no mainline Sonic game. There was no Sonic game at all for the 32X, to be honest with you. There was...
Well, there was Knuckles Chaotix.
But that's not what I meant was a game that had Sonic in it.
Okay.
Knuckles did not have Sonic in it at all. It was Knuckles
it didn't, but it was still a Sonic line game.
It was it was in the Sonic universe. It was like a spin-off. And it was actually not a bad game.
And also, I did to deviate a little bit to go to Galaxy's comment. I don't disagree with you. It did it a lot better. I'm just my point. I feel like still stands that the technology was still kind of limited for getting a lot of full motion onto the medium because it was still new, right? So it looked way better on PC. It was still a smidge on the rough side, but not nearly as bad as it was on a lot of the consoles at the time, just because of the expense that they were trying to do to get the console on the home to do the add-on. They just didn't have the money to invest in it to make it be as good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making that more clear or more confusing, Galaxy. Sorry.
Yeah. Now, I also don't. Here's where I do get a little frustrated with them not with them doing the 32X but not following through. And Sai, let me know if you agree with me on this. There are
I'm
probably
just
okay. Never mind. Move on. There are probably 5 or 6 very good games that had they come out on the Sega CD, you may not even have needed the 32X. Star Wars Arcade, which was a phenomenal game, actually. Probably one of my favorite games on the 32X and was very well done.
Yeah.
But then they brought out Afterburner, Virtual Racing, and Space Harrier, all 3 of those. All 3 of those which had very solid Genesis ports but couldn't do the scaling and rotation of the arcade.
And do you think that was part of their problem with some of these, is they're just releasing the same games, getting into the same rut that Atari did back in the day?
I think so.
Because Atari and the 2600, the 5200, and the 7800, I'd say a good fourth of the library at minimum was basically just revisiting the exact same game.
Yeah.
And making it look prettier.
Yeah. And in fact,
I feel like they did a lot of that because you had a lot of stuff from Master System to Genesis to 32X to Sega CD that were all effectively the same game, just iterating it closer to the arcade experience.
Well, and Afterburner is a very interesting one to bring up because they did put an Afterburner game on the Sega CD, Afterburner 3. Had a rockin' soundtrack, probably one of the best Afterburner soundtracks I've ever heard. Did absolutely nothing with the hardware. It looked like a Genesis game from the scaling and rotation portion with just a great soundtrack. I've got both of them. I've got the 32X version, I've got the Sega CD version. Night and day, the Sega CD, the 32X version is the arcade version with all of the trimmings. That is the best version of Afterburner that was out there.
I love how I came prepared with had more pictures than I put in OBS tonight because I didn't think we were going to go back this far.
I have a lot of pictures of stuff that I have owned at some point. Sadly, I don't own all the stuff anymore, but I have a lot of pictures of it.
I thankfully I never got rid of most of this stuff, and I'm glad I didn't. I
Well,
never
I'll tell
got
you
rid of
this. Afterburner, Space Harrier, these games on the 32X, 30 frames per second, the best they had ever looked at home until the Saturn versions eventually came out. But this was, I mean, it was almost arcade perfect. 30
Yep.
frames per second. That's pretty amazing. But
That's pretty good for that time.
But to Nick's point, these games were already on. I mean, they had been coming out since the Master System. They had Master System versions. They got Genesis versions.
Right.
People were like looking for the next new hotness. They weren't looking for these games when they came out. You know, they were
Right.
looking for polygonal, like.
Well, and around this time, and this is something that I'm covering in a couple other videos too. Is in the '90s you had a couple of paradigm shifts in gaming from the inception to as they went along. The first one being from things like the Atari, the Intellivision, the ColecoVision, where you're doing a high score, you're trying to convert arcade experiences over to a console so you can play them at home, into stuff like the Nintendo system, the NES, where you were starting to have more story-driven cutscenes, more linear stages with end levels and bosses and cutscenes and credits and things like that, right? So you're changing how you're building games from the home around that time. The 90s was another really, really big push in that, not only technologically, but a bigger push for big development teams, big expansive stories. When CDs started to drop, that's when you saw these huge, elaborate stories starting to unfold onto the console, and the graphical quality was hitting the level of the arcade. So the arcade was starting to dip because people weren't going there for the best graphics experience. They could now get it at home for like $40. And they could get more in-depth experiences too that were more meaningful, and they could spend 50 hours on or so at their home for a price of $40, right? As opposed to spending God only knows how much in an arcade.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the Saturn, I want to Zombie put something in the chat, and I had to run over and just grab just a couple.
Maybe talk of Pac-Man or Pac-Man related talk. Maybe talk of dots, pellets, fruit.
Hang on, Chuck. I'll get something for you. Hang on. Let me find something.
Jay Hill have it. So while he's doing that, Zombie, I agree with you. Zaxxon Mother Base 2000 was
there you go. Yeah.
an incredibly good looking game, polygonal, had a great soundtrack. This is one where they use the entire power of the 32X. Polygonal. Yes.
Oh, I thought it was political.
No, but that's a whole different. That's only allowed in Utah and.
Oh. Hey, I'm from Texas.
Hey, Fred, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Hold on, I got a couple more, and then we'll move on.
It's just easier to see comments on this screen. Let me get back.
One of the best versions of Mortal Kombat 2 until the Saturn came out, and this was arcade perfect. It really was.
I'll be honest. MK2, even on the Super Nintendo, was pretty freaking close to arcade. It looked really good.
It was, but the 32X it was just beautiful. Shadow Squadron, which was also polygonal and actually ran really, really well. This was a surprise hit, and then not as great a game, but it did have Doom. It did have Doom.
Doom was one of those that consoles struggled with forever. They all had problems with it.
They've gone
except
back.
Except the Jaguar version, which was actually programmed by John Carmack.
Wasn't that one missing the soundtrack though?
It didn't have music.
Yes.
But
yes.
That's gone
what
back
I mean. They all had problems. Like the fact that it played and looked great is fantastic. But if you're missing that soundtrack, that game just does not come together like it should. I'm sorry, it just doesn't.
They've gone back and they've.
There you go. There's your dots.
There you go.
I was going to say they've gone back and fixed that 32X version now, and it is.
I've seen that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Full CD soundtrack, full redone non-CD soundtrack. Like it moves super smooth, full screen. It's awesome. Like the 32X hacked version of Doom is pretty badass.
Which shows you that if they had any more time to
Well,
work
you could
it.
say that about most of these consoles. I mean, they got
Absolutely.
Castlevania running on an Intellivision. I mean,
Yeah.
with the price of memory
No.
getting cheaper and more time to work on things, you can achieve things that normally you wouldn't be able to pull off. And that's the same way with most of this hardware. It's capable of more than they really did use it to execute. It all comes
Absolutely.
down to time
Oh,
constraints.
you said Intellivision, and Intellivision Gamer shows up. Hey, what's up,
Yep,
Intellivision
there
Gamer?
he is.
Oh, hang
He
on,
was here
hang on.
earlier, but I didn't reply because I was getting everything set up and trying to eat dinner and getting everything
Ah.
laid out. So I wasn't
Yeah.
around.
So I just it was a you have to give at least before Kalinsky left. I have to give him credit for doing his utmost best to make the 32X as good as it could.
Yep.
With some good, solid titles. Like I said, it, with the exception of it ran slower than the Saturn, it had the same 32-bit chipset in it, and that's not a small thing.
Literally.
Yeah,
And we're
it's-
probably going to gloss over these two for a little bit, guys. But we may touch on this, which is one that's not very well known.
the hell is that?
That's the Sega Mega Drive.
Oh, yeah.
That's for the
That was-
airplane.
That was the precursor to this, the Nomad, which came out slightly after the 32X, right around 1995, and was Genesis' answer to playing Genesis on the go. But their next big evolution, realistically, was this, which needs to be moved.
What's that?
This would be
What's that?
one of the
I never heard that
one
one.
of the
What the
biggest faux pas that Sega had done to date.
Oh.
Not necessarily a bad system, but they did a lot of things
And even not
wrong.
necessarily not a bad system.
Well, they did
not
a
even
lot.
necessary.
They did a lot of things wrong with the launch. They did a lot of things with their
Yes.
customization of the market.
Yes.
That caused a lot of problems. So
I don't disagree.
Why-
That doesn't
why
make
did-
it a bad. It doesn't. It
I didn't say it made it a bad system. I said this is where they started to really stick their foot in it.
Well,
Yes.
I have to say that controller that they decided to launch with in the United States was the biggest mistake.
That's a goofy controller, dude.
That is
Like
a
the 6
horrible
button layout's
controller.
fine, but that D-pad, the first time I
yeah,
used
that D-pad was weird.
was super
Dude,
weird and
The
awful.
buttons,
I
the
hated it.
shoulder buttons are they're all it's like they're not even really buttons. It's like
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that D-pad, honestly, I used it at a friend's house. That thing is actually painful to use.
It is.
It digs into your thumb in weird ways. It's really floaty.
It's
It's
like-
almost like it wants to be an analog stick, but it's not. It's very unresponsive. It was just
It's like digging your
Unpleasant.
thumb into a cheese grater. It has these
Yeah.
little. It's not good.
no. It was a weird and bad design. When they already had a functional D-pad, they could have literally just taken their Genesis 6-button pad, put a Saturn logo on it, and plugged it into this thing and been done.
See, now here, that one,
Yeah.
that one's a lot better.
That one's good, and
See,
of course
that's a much better controller. And
Now
that's the
that-
one that came in from
that
Nights
is-
into Dreams. That was their
Yes,
3D controller.
how they went from making the worst controller in the world to one of the best. That is still one of my most comfortable, favorite controllers of all time.
Honestly, that controller reminds me a lot of like a prototype version of the Dreamcast controller.
It is. It's very
is.
similar. Yeah.
It
it
there's
has the
there's-
triggers and everything. Yeah.
Yep. It really is. That controller
Hey, Thumb.
is still. Hey, Thumbs. To this date, is still one of my most comfortable controllers to hold. It was so perfectly designed. I could, yeah.
Now, the Saturn had a few weird things. One, it launched the day after the 32X, which pretty much killed the 32X. Everybody clamored to get it because they wanted it for Virtua Fighter. That was one of the launch titles that came with it, which was a brilliant move. Where they really came into their big mistake is the Saturn actually did quite well in Japan, but where it really started to fall apart was in the United States. They initially went to announce it, and when they went to announce it, they announced it at roughly like $400. which
Yeah.
prompted Sony to come up and just say $299 and walk off stage. So the PlayStation launched very shortly after, shortly after the Saturn, which is another story, to $100 lower price point and roughly cheaper games, because I think they were like $40 a piece, and I think the Saturn games were a little bit more expensive.
And better games.
And it had more games and better games because the licensing deals were enough to pull people away from Nintendo because they weren't taking as much to license games onto the console. So,
I mean, let's start with the fact that, again, there's no mainline Sonic game on the Saturn.
That was the least of their problems since
I know,
launch
but I know.
Lost most of the American market in the process.
I'm
we
well
should
aware.
talk about
but
that elephant pretty early on in this conversation.
Well, we should, but the one Sonic game that they were working on even into the life of the Saturn got canceled. No, so there's two. The Japanese launch was not without its issues either. Sega wanted to.
Is this annoying that I keep throwing these things up? Just tell me to stop.
No, please do.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
No.
I've actually been using it to show pictures that I don't have or that I don't have loaded up, so it's been fine.
Okay.
Sega also wanted to launch in Japan with Panzer Dragoon and Clockwork Knight. They couldn't get there. So it was Virtua Fighter and some weird Japanese game I don't know, something Wan Chai Connection, something like that. Virtua Fighter carried it, but they one game is what they really honestly launched with. Hey, itches Vegeta. I was able to play a good home version of. Yes, the Saturn had a great version of Ultimate MK3. Absolutely did. I'll tell you what, it's got a great Mega Man 8 Anniversary Edition, which I have. Had a great version of a few games.
See, one of my favorite versions of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 was Mortal Kombat Trilogy on the N64, which while the controller was kind of rough to play the game, the fact that Shang Tsung could change into all the characters made it far superior, because that was removed out of most of the CD-based ones because they couldn't load that much into memory.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
basically, you could only mirror Shang Tsung to the opponent you were fighting, which meant that you really weren't using his shape-shifting anyway. Not that I use Shang Tsung a lot, but the faster load time and the fact that you could do that just made that version, to me, in my eyes, the superior version of the game overall.
Yeah. A 32X version of that would have been pretty cool.
I think a 32X version of that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Don't know about some of these Saturn games of later. Mega Man 8 on the Saturn now is one of his favorite Saturn games. Paid a pretty penny, but it's worth it.
It's worth it, and depending on what you paid for it then, it's worth. It's over it was over $600 last time I checked. Where's my Game My app? I'll tell you exactly what it was.
But here's what happened with the Saturn: is because they wanted to launch it and they wanted to beat Sony to market, and they wanted to get out and start competing with the Jaguar and the other consoles were on the market, they made a snap decision to launch the Saturn early. Kalinsky really wanted them to hold it back for like another year. He again thought he could get more life out of the Genesis. Most of the developers thought they really needed the time to be able to develop the titles for it, to be able to get the titles out on the console so that they could have a good library at launch. But Sega of Japan was not having it, and so they launched it early. And when they did that, they lost huge swatches of the market. Walmart dropped them. Best Buy dropped them. I want to say Toys R Us dropped them, which was KB
Toys R Us. Toys R Us was one of Toys R Us was one of the first that carried them.
Toys R Us was the only ones to get it. They got it first.
Toys R Us, EB, because I was around during that time. Toys R Us, EB, Babbage's, and Software, etc. got it. Walmart, Best Buy, and KB Toys is the other one that didn't.
That's right. This was before KB Toys was bought by Toys R Us. That's right.
Right.
And they dropped their entire line. It was gone. They're like, okay, we're done. And so they pulled a ton of their stuff off the shelves, and they were just done.
FP.
So it hurt them financially in more ways than they could have imagined launching it early like that. And so finding one was difficult. Owning one was expensive because it was $400.
Yep.
Okay, so he paid only under $300 when he got it.
Paid $3, so it's worth
more.
$565 complete in box, $960 new and shrink wrap.
Damn. Good
So
lord.
smart investment.
Dude, just the disc is worth $245.
Yeah.
Hey, here's
So
one I
he's saying
sold.
Kmart was one place in town that had a decent amount of Saturn games, and it wasn't even that
There you go.
much.
I sold that one for about $400.
I put this back.
There you go.
Yeah, that was cool to own. I had that for several years.
I didn't realize I had Mike in the background on this one. I'll have to fix that at some point. That's weird. I don't know how I did that.
Where did Mike go? We lost Mike.
It's okay.
You're like, eh? Did we?
Did we? Did we really? It's okay. It's okay.
Wow.
But the other thing that they didn't take into account with the Saturn is they weren't really paying attention to the market. And I think this was another conversation that Klinsky had with them. And, we'll wait on Mike to come back before we get into this, because this was
I can hear you. No, I can still hear you.
Okay.
I just
And
wanted to grab.
This was kind of a big deal
my
because
Mega
they
Man.
had like two different processors in this thing. They had one that would handle 3D and they had one that handled 2D, which made 2D games look great, but they didn't have enough focus on 3D, and that's where the market started to rapidly go. Because around this time, the PlayStation started coming in and really focused on 3D graphics, even though they were better at 2D still. The N64 came out and heavily started moving the needle towards 3D graphics, and everybody wanted to play more 3D games and more FPS games. They weren't really focused on arcade experiences, and the arcade was starting to take a dip shortly after the console launched. And they brought this out to focus more on their next line of arcade titles and porting those to the console by using their EM2 stuff. And so they misjudged where the market was going when they built this console, because they wanted it to push their arcade scene.
So, I want to. Yes, they did, and there are some things that did suffer because of it. However, one of the things that Yu Suzuki did that was brilliant was everybody always talked about if you tap the metal of the Saturn, you get some incredible things out of it. There were things that the Saturn couldn't do with its two VDUs. It didn't do well with transparencies. A lot of transparencies in games were mesh. However, Yu Suzuki made it so that developers could do 3D on the Saturn and do it well. I always in one of my I've got a video where I talk about my top.
Did you almost have to do like
Saturn.
assembly level code though in order to pull that off?
At the beginning, but Yu Suzuki designed an entire graphics library built around that for developers.
Okay.
And that came about when they launched Virtua Fighter 2. And I'll tell you what, and I said this in the video that I made about the Saturn games that I owned. Virtua Fighter 2 ran better than it had any right to do on the Saturn. It ran at 60 frames per second with a full character set and an incredible high resolution.
Well, when you skip all the overhead and you go right down to basically talking to the computer in ones and zeros, yeah, of course.
Yep.
For those of you guys that don't know, there's a couple of different programming languages. There's high-level languages like C++, Java, etc., all those that you probably heard in passing from someone somewhere at some point, right? And then there's what they call low-level languages. These things are almost talking to the computer in its own language of ones and zeros. And one of the lowest ones that you'll use is called assembly language. It's basically just one step above just communicating in ones and zeros, right? And so when we're talking about talking directly to the hardware, talking to the bare metal, that's what we mean. Effectively, this gentleman made an entire library that effectively was almost designed to translate any code that you had that you put into it into machine language to talk to the hardware directly. So it removed a lot of the translation and the middleware that would normally be doing that kind of work for you, which would make it way more responsive than it necessarily had any right to be.
Yep.
So that's how they got there.
And on top of that, they made Virtua Fighter 2 in a year. A single year. It was amazing what they did with that game, and it led to you're somewhat right, Itchy, but if you look at any of the transparencies that you see on any Saturn game, they were always made out of a mesh, even later on in development. But I will tell you that what Yu Suzuki did, it led to games like Burning Rangers, which I don't know if you.
That's expensive.
I'll tell you what, man, it is expensive. I think this is an $800 game. It is. This had light sourcing and everything. This was.
Yeah.
I can't even. Just sometimes you have to. I can't even describe it. And this worked with the 3D pad. What an amazing game. So the system was capable of it. I, by the way, also brought over Sonic Jam, which is also it's and this gave you a slight look into what they could have done with a Saturn Sonic, because there's like a time capsule area where you can go and run around and look at things from Sonic's history, and it was all done in 3D, and it looked wild.
Yeah.
I also happen to have Duke Nukem, which is
I had a lot of fun with the game on PC.
This was a 1-to-1 port on the Saturn, with one exception: you could not save mid-level. Oh. You could not save in level.
Of all the things to not
I know.
have.
For those of you guys who didn't play a lot of 90s era PC FPS games, save spamming was a real thing. Like, there were a lot of times in games like Doom, you turn a corner, you weren't dead, you still had decent ammo, you save. You move a little bit, you have an encounter, you didn't die, you save. A lot of times in a different slot. So,
right.
You'd have just this huge list of save data on your computer to make it through half these games, because that's just how you played them.
I gotta say, the Saturn has some really good first-person shooter games, like obviously Duke Nukem, Quake, Alien Trilogy.
And one I wish I never got rid of. This is one sigh I kick myself all the time. Power Slave.
Yeah. It did with full colored lighting effects and everything. It's crazy.
And I'm just gonna put this up there for a little bit, because we definitely need to get to this tonight.
The GOAT.
This is the blue ribbon event for Sega, in my opinion. It's their swan song, and it's pretty much the best console they ever created.
With the best launch lineup that has never been duplicated.
I've never seen a better launch lineup than this. And I've never seen Soul Calibur never got translated better than it did on this one.
It still, to this day, holds up.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, they called it Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast, but it was Soul Edge on the PlayStation. And it was Correct. Soul Edge in the arcade. It's the same game. For some reason, they changed the name to Soul Calibur.
Yeah. This system, again,
but we could talk about the Saturn and how they goofed up. There were a lot of changes. Kalinski's now out of there. He left here in the Saturn era.
He left.
They brought in, was it Bernie Stolar, who started cleaning house and cutting a ton of stuff out.
Who also lost working designs, which is why you stop seeing. And man, I tell you what, I always tell this back when the Saturn and the Dreamcast were, but back before there were, social media, you had, like UUNet forums and stuff. And the gentleman's name who created and ran Working Designs, his name was Victor Ireland. He hated Bernie Stolar with the passion of the red hot sun.
Well, and Bernie had come over from Sony, I think, right?
At the time? Who told Victor Ireland when he worked for Sony that the PlayStation had no place for RPGs. And he would not put a single Working Designs RPG, which basically what Working Designs did was they took Japanese games from Game Arts and localized them. So games like Grandia and Lunar and those. They were all games that were Japanese. Working Designs localized them and brought them to the States. Bernie Stolar told him when he worked at Sony, piss off. And there was some way
is funny
that
because the PlayStation was really well known for a lot of Japanese RPGs.
You would think, but
it really was.
Well, I understand.
The first couple of years of being a PlayStation owner, there was nothing. Like we didn't get no RPGs until I think
it was all fighting games and yeah.
King's Field came out. We're like, oh wow, it's sort of an RPG. Like cool.
Yeah, it was not until Stolar left that you started to see them. But the problem is he went to Sega. Working Designs have been working with Sega for years on the Sega CD. And I'm telling you, I would be in these UUNet forums and chats and stuff. Victor Ireland called Bernie Stolar every name in the book.
He honestly did not have a good reputation inside. Well, to Sega Japan, he may have been fine because he came in and he kind of cleaned house with a lot of products. My understanding is when he came in, they had about 9 products running concurrently. Their arcade business was failing. They didn't have any money to really market a console, but they needed a console because they needed something to keep their arcade market afloat. So they started coming up with designs for the Dreamcast. They brought in Stolar because Klinsky just said, "You're not listening to me. I don't have any input here. I've done good work for you. We're done," and left.
Yep.
So they brought in Stolar to basically come in and kind of save their sinking ship because they were going under rapidly around this time. And honestly, the consumer confidence was at an all-time low. You had the Sega CD, you'd had the 32X, and you'd had the Saturn, which all had kind of rocky launches with kind of spotty libraries, particularly the 32X and the Saturn. The Sega CD library was okay, but a lot of people felt kind of burned by having to add another $200 into their console to be able to play CD games, and then having the 32X come out and needing that on top of the CD, which was almost like $700-800 in your console by that point, just in hardware and 2 power strips and hopefully a good breaker system in your house, just to be able to run the thing. It was ridiculous. Literally every time you booted up your Genesis with all this stuff on there, it felt like Christmas Vacation when they got their lights turned on and like all the alarms went off and they flipped the breaker just to get the power back on.
No.
You were going to cause brownouts. It was kind of one of those things. So he was there to kind of trim the fat, and he did that with a lot of people that were inside the organization and ruffled a lot of feathers inside the organization. Did it with the company that Mike's talking about. He didn't have really good luck in their sports division either, because Sega Sports had been a huge thing for a while, was going to be massive on the Dreamcast, and then he also had a few arguments with EA as well.
Well, so that's okay. I do want to speak to that a little bit because I keep in mind. So at this point, I began my game journalism career covering the Dreamcast. It was the first system I ever covered for Dreamcast HQ. By the time the Dreamcast launched, which was about the time I got involved, Peter Moore was already in it because Stolar had left in December 99. But I here's the thing about what Stolar did that was kind of double-edged. The big thing he did was he was the one who bought Visual Concepts. He brought them in to make the Sega sports games that then later got sold to 2K.
Right. And became 2K Sports.
And became 2K Sports. But that was not his decision. That was Peter Moore's decision. And here's where that all went weird. EA came in and said, we want to be the only sports games on the Dreamcast. And Stolar's like, well, no.
No.
We've always had, number one, Sega's always had their own sports games. Even when Madden and all your games were here, we still had our games too. And I just bought this shiny new object here. And no, I'm happy to continue to have Madden, and we're not going to necessarily compete with you, but I'm not pulling my sports division for you. EA, I'm sorry, EA bullied Sega in that matter. And I remember they went to Next Generation magazine, and they were interviewed. Where was it? Hawkins? Well, I don't think it was Hawkins at that time. I think it was Don Riccisello. Whoever it was who was running EA at the time said, our mission is to kill the Dreamcast. I mean, that was, and that's the other part of it that Vegeta is. The 2K was better and kind of still is than what Madden even is today.
I think 2K is actually still bigger in the sports franchise. They're still the name as opposed to EA. EA started to fade a little bit when 2K started really cranking out their sports games.
Yeah. But
a lot of the sports games on the Dreamcast are there, and a lot of the guys are saying they had their PS2, but then they got their Dreamcast, and the Dreamcast was a little bit better of a system. It was actually a more powerful system than in a lot of ways than the PS2, and definitely the PS1. It was vastly ahead of its time. Where it kind of fell down a little bit as consoles started to evolve was it still stuck with the single analog system, whereas the PS2 and the PS1 later on had a dual analog stick, which kind of brought them more into the third dimension a little bit more effectively than Dreamcast.
Agreed.
Sega's biggest problem during this era was they had no money. So if people who were in the know and saw the console, or people that were Sega fans back in the day and had felt a little burn, saw this console and went, oh my God, this is what I've wanted you to do forever. I'm so in. And so we all jumped in early. And don't get me, and I'm not even lying, they had about 12 to 15 launch titles, and I wanted them all.
I had them all.
I have
got
never
them all.
Since or before seen a launch this strong.
I agree.
Ever. In any console's history.
It was magical. That the first year of the Dreamcast was.
And they had something for everybody. You had your Soul Calibur for your fighters. You had racing games. You had adventure games. You had a Sonic game. You had all of it was there. They covered all the bases.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like a magical synergy of everything that was out there. And it was so confusing to see people ditching it or just sticking with the PlayStation 1 and not even looking at it. Where they started to get nervous is they were having issues with advertising. It still wasn't selling as well. They started to have a bit of a piracy problem. And on top of that, the PlayStation 2 was on the horizon. They still hadn't recouped too much money. They're still hemorrhaging money because they were still trying to use the Dreamcast to prop up the arcade market, like the arcade market was still going to be there. And they're not the only people that overestimated the importance of the arcade around this time. The arcade was a dying beast around this time. And primarily because you had the Dreamcast, you had the PlayStation 2, you had the Nintendo 64, you had the 3DO coming out. You had the CDI. You had the Neo Geo, which was already kind of like a flash in the pan and starting to kind of go away because the arcade scene was dying and it was basically one-to-one arcade translation. But you had all these consoles on the market, and most of these consoles offered unique experiences that you could not get in the arcade. They were deeper, more meaningful experiences with deeper stories, bigger budgets, bigger teams, all focused on bringing you a narrative story and a grandiose story for the price of $40. The arcade just could not compete. And so trying to use these consoles to prop up what they thought was going to still be their bread and butter was kind of a big mistake. They should have started cutting their arcade scene to really invest in the Dreamcast, or in shoring up the Dreamcast, coming out with the Dreamcast 2 and putting to bed the original Dreamcast so that they could have fixed a lot of the rampant piracy problem that they had, where people were able to just burn the discs and not have to pay anything for it because they started losing attachment rate rapidly with the console as a result.
The Dreamcast 2, you mean the Xbox?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, for those of you guys that didn't notice, and I'll zoom this up a little bit so maybe you guys can see it.
Yeah. Whoa. It's coming at me.
Compatible with Windows CE.
So, I got a story on that too. Let me go grab my import Dreamcast, and I will show you something.
Uh-oh. Import. Aren't they all imported?
I think so. For those of you guys that don't know, Windows CE was a minimalist operating system at the time that was used on a lot of Palm computers in order to drive their operating system. It was essentially Windows. And they had an agreement with
it was also
Sega to drive their operating system on their console at the time. And they were starting to make rumors that they were going to get into the console market themselves right around the time that the PlayStation 2 launched.
You're going to love this.
Okay.
So I want to show you, this is the Japanese Dreamcast, all right? So when the Japanese Dreamcast, let me get up here. Let me see if there's how the best to...
I'm not sure. I can kind of see it. It looks like it still says Windows CE to me.
It does. But what it says is designed for Windows CE. When Sega and Microsoft first started talking, the idea was going to be that Microsoft's Windows CE was going to be the primary operating system. What ended up happening was, as developers started to make games with Windows CE, they started to realize, have a great night, Joe. As they started making those games with Windows CE, they started to realize that Windows CE was not a great operating system for a console. So
I agree. It has too much. It would have too much overhead.
It had way too much overhead. You can always tell a Windows CE game because it doesn't run at the same frame rate and typically doesn't look as good.
But let me say this. I understand that that's true. But I hear a lot of people like crap on, for example, Sega Rally. And I think Sega Rally on Dreamcast is fantastic. Now, could it have been a little smoother? Sure. Yeah. But that isn't, I mean, it was a tool that could be taken advantage of if they wanted.
Well, for developers who weren't very experienced, Windows CE was great. But what happened was as they got towards the US launch, Bernie and then Peter Moore, they both kind of had the same idea. We don't want to stick Windows CE. We don't want to stick developers with Windows CE being the primary. We want to make sure that they understand that we have our own development tools as well, and you can make, this was an easy console to develop for on its face. So they changed the wording from designed for Windows CE to compatible with Windows CE so that developers didn't feel like they were shoehorned into using Windows CE.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, like, we had so little time with this damn console. I don't know. I mean,
you got to remember, this console only lasted like a year and a half. Because on the heels of this console, very quickly started to come out the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. They were both going to start entering into the market.
Yeah.
Sega didn't really have the money to compete with Sony at the time, and they certainly didn't have the money to compete with Xbox. because they had all of Microsoft behind them. It wasn't like a subset. Like Sony had its own separate game division by this point that was funding itself.
Right.
Microsoft has always just been, well, Microsoft is Microsoft. We have all the money in the world, so we could just stay in this game forever.
Hey, you guys know more than I do. Like, seriously, like, what is the deal here? Like, did Sega? What happened with this? Because the Xbox is like, obviously.
I can tell you what happened with this console towards the end. Yeah, but go ahead with your question.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, everybody has always said the Xbox is like the Dreamcast 2, and Sega and Microsoft were tied together at the hip. And what really happened here? Did Microsoft nudge Sega out the door on the console thing so they
Here's roughly what happened is they didn't really renew with Windows CE because it just wasn't working for them, and it was costing them a lot of money to kind of keep it on there in the first place. The licensing wasn't cheap per console. So that alone, on top of their already not insignificant expenses and hemorrhaging money, was causing them problems. And so they actually had Peter Moore and I think it was one other person, I can't remember the name, go through, and they kind of went through and did the numbers, and they came back to Sega Japan. They said, look, you're not going to like this, but here's what you need to do. You're really good at developing games, but what you're not good at doing is managing hardware and managing like your arcades and stuff. So in order to keep your company alive, you have to basically just become a third-party developer and focus on your development house. That's what we recommend you do. And so that's when they started shutting all of this down. It wasn't really Microsoft themselves, though Sega Japan was worried about the Xbox coming out, because even though they were happy to license Windows CE to Sega, they still wanted to do their own console. Those were independent ventures for them, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, literally, if you look at the Dreamcast, there's a whole bunch of stuff that the Xbox just takes straight from the Dreamcast.
Well, so and I'm looking at, I was looking to see.
Well, and they did try to partner with both Sega and Nintendo. Microsoft did. They tried to do a partnership with both of them, and, well, Nintendo mostly laughed at them. Sega turned them down.
Right.
What happened in that year was, so Peter Moore said, in order for the Dreamcast to remain viable, they had to get to 5 million units by the end of 2000, which 2001 is when they January 31st, 2001 is when they discontinued the Dreamcast. That's when it died.
Vegeta, I think they're pretty similar and compatible. There's not that much of a difference. I think they swapped to. They had a big discussion on that. I think that hardware actually got unified at one point. Because they were going to go with NVIDIA, and then they got changed in design. So I don't think it was ever focused on NVIDIA, even in the States. Because NVIDIA was one of the design tacks.
No, they went with 3DFX.
And then they went with, and I think they went with like 3DFX. Well, I think it had got bought by 3D. Didn't NVIDIA buy 3DFX by that time?
No, they were still.
Yeah, 3DFX still put out Voodoo cards until what, 2002?
Yeah.
Was that when they stopped? Because I know at one point NVIDIA bought them for the 3D.
No, wait a minute. Wait. The Dreamcast went with NEC stuff. They did the Power VR.
Yeah. Power VR.
That's what that was. Because you know why? Because 3DFX sued Sega for breach of contract on that.
Yeah, because there was 2 or 3 different designs floating around, and then they ditched one of the designs last minute because the Dreamcast kind of had a troubled design phase, if I recall. It's been a minute since I did the hardware specs on this thing. I had it all down in a video at one point, and I've forgotten it.
And it's kind of funny because I had on my PCs at the time, because I was a PC gamer back in the day, I had the Voodoo 2. I had the Voodoo 2,
and I think I had the Voodoo 3.
Yeah,
I had
the last one I remember coming out.
I had dual Voodoo 2s in my machine. It was amazing.
Oh, look at you! How did you?
The Voodoo line of cards was probably one of my favorite cards. I didn't even look at NVIDIA until Voodoo just disappeared off the market.
And I always bought the Monster ones, the Monster 3DFX.
Yeah.
So
3D effects was so cool, man. Back in the day.
yes.
It was
Hey,
badass.
America. How you doing, man? How's it going, KT?
Hey, KT, what's up?
Well, I think there was something cost-wise that they wanted to go with the NEC hardware, and it was also Japanese, so that also played a factor. But I think they liked what they could do with that hardware design.
Wait.
better.
NEC, right? So technically,
You're
Oh, my
saying,
God.
no, it's not a TurboGrafx console.
Not a TurboGrafx.
Not a
So
TurboGrafx.
what I was trying to get at
If you want
was
to call it a spiritual successor to the TurboGrafx, you can call it that, but it's not a TurboGrafx.
new video coming out tomorrow.
so Peter Moore had given Sega of Japan a 5 million unit kind of break point. He said that's what we needed to get to by the year 2000 in order to stay relevant. They only got the 3.5 million, and there was just no ability for them to lower the price enough and cut into their profits to keep them going. And here, but people forget this too. The PS2 had a launch shortage, and Sega was they were depending on that to keep the Dreamcast going. What ended up happening was Sony at the same time developed the slim PS1. Remember that little itty bitty PS1 thing?
Yeah.
And people bought that instead of a Dreamcast. They stayed with Sony until PS2 got its footing. So all those shortages and everything didn't benefit the Dreamcast at all because no one leapt away from Sony and leapt up to the Dreamcast. And so they didn't get to their 5 million draw. So all right, at the beginning of 2001, they had no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really sucked, man, because
It does.
we were all excited, and I was getting my friends excited, and they were renting the games at the rental stores, and I mean, they had it at Walmart, and that was a big deal in my hometown because it was a small town, and they didn't carry a lot of different things at Walmart. We thought, dude, let me ask you this. Maybe you guys were different. You're more in the know than I am. I was utterly shocked when I found out they were canceling the Dreamcast. I was like, I've never been more shocked about something that happened in the video game industry.
Honestly, I wasn't as surprised, but then I didn't have as much confidence in Sega around this time. Don't get me wrong, I loved this console. I adored this console, but I had had my confidence shaken by so many other attachments that I just didn't feel like I got my use out of it.
Yeah.
That I wasn't really surprised that they were having problems. And I was worried about that when I jumped in. But the lineup was so good that I couldn't not pre-order one, right? Because I had it day one. I pre-ordered it. I put down my money like months and months ahead of time. And I put money down for I want to say at least 6 games at launch.
It was only $200 too, man.
Yeah,
That's
it was $200.
And they came out of the
games
gate.
were like $40 a piece. And it looked way better than anything else that hit the market. The games looked
It
phenomenal.
had internet. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
it had all
and I
sorts
have
of shit going for it.
So let's see. On my US Dreamcast, I actually have the which this was wild. You had a modular modem, and this is actually the broadband adapter. I had the broadband adapter.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
See, I never dipped into the broadband, but I didn't have.
Oh, it was amazing.
Well, see, I didn't have an independent line for the phone line because it used a 56K modem.
Yeah.
For its,
Yes,
its
that's
up and down.
the standard modem was 56K.
Right, and I think I think that adapter let you actually use more of a cable line, but I never had that available in my area anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, for those of you guys who don't remember, like a 56K modem effectively used your regular phone line, right?
Yep.
So unless you had a separate phone line that you could
SegaNet.
dedicate just for being online, which I eventually did in my house, you had to pray to God nobody picked up the phone
Yep.
while you were using the internet because it would immediately disconnect you, like gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was a real thing.
Well,
Nick, did you get to play anything online on your Dreamcast?
I did not. I didn't play anything online with that. I
played everything.
I didn't do Fantasy Star Online.
Oh,
I still
God,
have
I
never
spent
played
so
that.
much
I
time.
think there's some of those on Steam.
I got
still
to
yet
play-
dip into those.
there's Fantasy Star Online 2
Yeah.
on Xbox, PlayStation, all that. It's free to play, but it's
I think
Yeah.
the fans have put up some kind of server. If you want to play the Dreamcast one, I think there's a way to do it, but I have no idea how to do
there
it.
are
Yeah.
people that have there are people that can still with both. I played everything, man. I
Dude,
played Outrigger. I played
hell yeah.
Speed Devils. I played
Yeah.
Pod. I played you know all these games.
dude,
too.
I got to play NFL 2K1, I think, and online I got my ass destroyed. Okay, I'm not gonna lie about it. The guy
It was-
killed me on, but it was. I played a football game on the Dreamcast with a guy from California.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
I was-
that at the time was huge. That was.
And don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, like I thought
that kind of co-op gameplay had been around on the PC, but it had not been on a console until.
I
this point.
thought at the time that like I have, and I still got it. It's over on the shelf behind me. I had the NetLink for the Saturn, so that was the dial-up. The dial-up.
Yeah, a lot of those didn't work as well though, and they didn't really do a lot of competitive play on those. Did
Duke
they?
Nukem was amazing on it.
Was it okay?
Duke Nukem supported it.
And Itchy's Vegeta said with Xbox and Nintendo GameCube coming out, I wasn't shocked at all. I was also kind of surprised the same didn't happen to either Xbox or Nintendo because he didn't think there was room for 3 consoles. And I can get that because it had almost always, even though there were like 8 or 9 consoles out in the 90s, it had always kind of been a close 2-man race. Right?
Yeah,
all the
it
others
always
were
was.
basically just kind of dipping in. Because it had always been like Nintendo and Sega for the longest. And then Sony came in and started dethroning them and almost killed Sega outright. And really just took the wind right out of Nintendo when they launched. And then everybody laughed when Microsoft said they were dipping in. Because everybody was thinking, okay, you got Sega on the market, you got Nintendo on the market, you got Sony in the market. This is a Japanese market. Video games have always been a Japanese market. Microsoft doesn't have a chance, right? So everybody, myself included, even though I bought an Xbox at launch, thought the Xbox might fall on its face in like a year, right? Yeah. It was a real possibility. Either that or the whole thing would crash repeatedly because Windows around the time was laughably unstable, right? And so we're all expecting it to be kind of one of those things where like your console's crashing constantly because it's a Microsoft product. And those jokes were going around all the time. But it worked. And they did a lot of smart things with that, which is an entirely different discussion than what we're going to have tonight. But it's kind of both an extension of the Dreamcast and kind of a revisioning of what online gameplay was going to be, especially in the console market, right? Yeah. And the hard drive that they had on it that allowed it to do things that other consoles couldn't do. So it really did change the face of the market almost like a third time, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at something. Shout out to archive.org, the Internet Wayback Machine. I looked for. Oh, this is so funny. So I'm going to show you. Let me see if I can get this link to you. Actually, I may be able to. Can I share my? Well, no. Yeah, can I share my screen?
I think
no
I can.
Idea. I think I can.
I don't think
Hang
we
on.
tried that through video. I know it works through StreamYard, but I don't know if it works here. I gotta cut this short in a little bit. I gotta spend some time with my wife and get some sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm almost. Where is? Hang on. Yeah. Okay. Here. See if this works. Says I'm sharing a window.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can. Where is that? Okay, here's the control room. Okay. So okay, this might take me a minute.
All right. Not. I could probably. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a link that.
I I think I can. I think I can do this. I just have to.
Oh, neat, as a browser source. Well, that would be it.
What year are we looking at here? 2000.
There we go. We are looking at 2001. So this was the site that this was my first.
I don't know if I can
game.
get this zoomed in good so we can see it.
Yeah.
But...
Oh, hang on. There we go. I can zoom it in.
It's going to cover us up a little bit because, sorry guys, it's kind of janky.
Yeah. So back in 2001. So there's Chris. Chris helped me found Next Level Gaming along with Mark. But here were all the stuff that we talked about when they made that decision. And yet there was still, let me see if this, I don't even think this is going to work. Hold on. No, damn. But we covered this back in 2001. So to answer your question about were I taken aback or anything by it, unfortunately, because I was literally in the industry, I was going to E3. I had developer, publishers, and Sega contacts. I knew this was coming. I knew this. Unfortunately, I knew this before most people did. I had gotten a really interesting call from my rep. There was a guy, his name was Chase. He never gave anybody his last name. I worked for Access PR. He was a great guy. He called me about a week before they made the call to publicly and said, "I'm just letting you know Sega's pulling out." And I said, "Chase," I said, "given what's been going on, I kind of see it." And he's like, "Yeah." So I wasn't very surprised by it. I was upset by it. And then that's when a few of us got together and said, well, we could either keel out, hey, we had fun covering this Dreamcast thing. You can, I'll stop sharing that. Or I came to Mark and Chris and Sean Foster, who also worked on this site, and said, I got a crazy idea. Sega's going to do multi-platform stuff. They're going to put stuff on Xbox, on PlayStation, and all this stuff. Why don't we make a new multi-website format website and just keep going? I got all these guys together and we created Next Level Gaming. So Sega did actually, in a way, also launch my brand.
Yeah.
However, I was always.
I will say the funniest thing as somebody who had both Sega and Nintendo consoles back in the day, it was the most bizarre thing to start seeing Sega titles on a Nintendo console. I never thought I'd ever see that happen. It was a weird day.
Yeah.
It was weird to see Sega games on Xbox, but man, I'll tell you, and this is where I was still happy with Sega at that time. And by the way, in March of 2001, the Dreamcast was #1 in Japan.
Nice, KT. Congrats on your new job, man. Yeah, definitely get some sleep.
Hey, absolutely.
We've got to bounce out of here soon too, because we've all got to get some sleep ourselves.
Yeah, the Dreamcast actually was, because they cut the price to $50, and it sold like nuts. But when I saw Full Auto and Full Auto was on Xbox, and Panzer Dragoon Orta, and absolutely, congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And welcome in, SD. When I saw these games on the Xbox, They were awesome. Condemned then on the 360 had Condemned and Chrome Hounds, and like they went on and made some amazing games. Sega GT, was great on Xbox. And I think I have that. It was called Homoglobian something. It was really the name of it's weird. But for a while, Sega as a software developer only wasn't the worst thing. Yeah, as a Sega guy, it kind of was weird having to go and get a PS2. But Sega was going to live on. And up until they made that announcement at the Video Game Awards, Sega hasn't been the same.
Yeah, I'm honestly hoping that they'll start bringing back some of these titles. I was hoping it would start with Virtua Fighter 5 because they remastered it and they dropped it on current consoles, and I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. Maybe you're going to start doing some of your other titles, like Daytona and a bunch of these others, right? Sega Grand Prix, all the Sega Rally, all these things, and start bringing some of these forward in time. And this could be a really cool idea, along with coming out with a new, more modern Virtua Fighter, right? Which apparently they've talked about, but they're not sure how. And what I thought was funny is they don't know. They're like, we're not sure how to modernize it because we don't have any like flashy and fun like fireballs and stuff like Street Fighter has. And I'm like, have you not seen Tekken? Like, have you not looked at Tekken in the last 15 years at all? Like, just
do what you do best,
or
do
remaster something like that. Do something like that. Just make it tighter, make it faster. Make it maybe a little bit more three-dimensional. But Soul Calibur's been fine. Dead or Alive's been fine. Tekken's been fine. All in the world of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. They've all been fine.
Bring a master game, a combination of Fighters Mega Mix and Last Bronx. Give me that.
Yeah, just bring back some of these things. Like, you've got your Streets of Rage that's out now. Come back with some Final Fight and all this other stuff. They're revisiting some of these properties, and I think they've got a good start with Golden
Final
Axe
Fight's
and
Capcom.
Shinobi. That's true, but start bringing some of these things to the forefront that you really haven't touched in a while.
This Shinobi game looks amazing.
I think the Shinobi game has the potential to be like absolutely amazing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're doing, but I'm approaching it with cautious optimism, right?
But I like the Crazy Taxi.
The Crazy Taxi is a great idea.
Jet Grind.
Yeah, they got Jet Grind, but you also have there's another game out right now that's like a spiritual successor to.
It's called
Cyber.
I played a little bit. I've got it.
I want to pick it up. It looks like a lot of fun.
It's decent. I streamed it a little bit back in the day. I'm sorry. Oh, geez. So before we move on, I just want to pay homage, if you don't mind, to the Dreamcast's launch library.
After you do that, we're gonna wrap this up because I'm gonna stop at Dreamcast. If we want to do Nomad and stuff like that, we'll do that some other day if we want to do it. But we've covered. It took us a long time just to get off Sega CD again and to get here.
Hey, well, because Cy came in and I wanted Cy's.
No, it's all good. No. I'm just saying we definitely didn't hit everything that I thought we were gonna hit, but that's okay.
No, I think we did.
I think we've mostly covered pretty much everything that we wanted to cover.
I think so. So here we are. You ready? The Sega Dreamcast launch lineup. Mortal Kombat Gold.
Such a good game. Love that game.
Yep. TNN Motorsports Hardcore Heat.
Yeah.
Which was okay. Monaco Grand Prix, which was good. NFL
we're always
Blitz.
happy to have you here, man. If you want to come back,
yes, absolutely, Itchy.
Every other week, there's going to be a lot more different stuff coming out on the channel. Like I said at the beginning, content's going to be a little sporadic for a little bit on this channel as I start getting my footing under it again, with new stuff, because my timing is down on all the old stuff I was doing. But since I'm retiring some of that and doing some new stuff, my timing's going to be off until I figure out how long they take to do. So that's going to be... It's going to take me a little while to get my footing again. That's all.
And Itchy, I just followed you, and I'm looking at your channel, and you got some badass videos, man. You got some great stuff on here. He's got some great retro stuff on his channel. This is nice.
Oh, we finally have some more retro stuff going on here. I'm
Yes,
glad to see
indeed.
this growing. I'm absolutely following this right now.
Okay, so you need to do more of it because some of this stuff is old but good. He did a let's play super off-road SNES versus Genesis. I love that game. He did a Hyperstone Heist versus Turtles in Time. Yeah, dude. All right. So anyway, where was I? NFL Blitz 2000. Phenomenal game.
Yeah, that's
Air
an evil
Force-
game, but a lot of
Yep.
fun.
Air Force Delta, which was Konami, I believe. Ready to Rumble Boxing,
That's an amazing game.
and both of them were. Ready to Rumble 2 was just as good.
Yep.
A very, very underrated game that I still have, Expendable, which was basically a
I think I might have played that a little bit.
it was an isometric, a 3D isometric, just run and gun, blow shit up game.
Oh, no, I've only seen you play that. I don't think I picked that one up, but I have seen you play that.
Power Stone.
I had Power Stone. Loved Power Stone.
I have the import version.
Power Stone
Sonic
2
Adventure.
is really good too. Sonic Adventure,
It
amazing.
launched with a mainline Sonic game that was probably
Yes.
one of the best out there.
Absolutely.
Arrow Wings, which was another flight game. Pen Triicelon, which doesn't sound like a game that would be a decent game, but it is. Tokyo Extreme Racer, which I hate, but it was very popular.
Whatever. Shut up.
Exactly. See, you're not the only one.
All
I got
right,
another friend of
that's all
mine-
the time
yeah.
we have for today. No.
Good night.
What I think was the better racing game from Monaco Grand Prix, Kart Flag to Flag.
I don't think you're right about that, but okay.
NFL 2K,
Oh yeah.
Hydra Thunder,
Oh yeah.
I love me some Hydro Thunder.
which now, by the way, you know who owns that? You know who owns that IP?
Doesn't Microsoft own that IP now?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I tried downloading that on my Xbox, and it was the mobile version, and I was very pissed.
Oh,
I was very, very upset that I couldn't play it.
yeah,
like,
I have
OG
Hydra Thunder
Hydro.
Hurricane. I have Hydra Thunder Hurricane on the. I think it was on the OG Xbox. It's back compat.
Yeah.
House of the Dead 2. Because remember,
Oh,
there
yeah.
were still
Yeah,
light guns
except
back
those-
then.
The guns sucked ass though. The
They
Japan
did suck ass. They weren't as good as
Dude.
the.
Was it Code Veronica in the launch window?
No,
no.
I think that was a later. Yeah.
That was a
it?
little later.
Okay. I know
Soul Calibur?
Yeah.
And then the last one was Trick Style, which was
Oh,
a
yeah, yeah.
futuristic skating kind of game.
It's hoverboards.
Hoverboards, right?
Yeah. That game's cool.
And Blue Stinger. It had an RPG
I'm
at
about to
launch.
say I remember Blue Stinger because I rented that one a couple of times, I think.
Yep.
Or I might have bought it on the cheap. I never got super deep into that game, but it was really unique. I
It
actually
wasn't an
really enjoyed
RPG. It wasn't an RPG. I'm trying to remember what kind of game was it.
It was kind of almost like a Resident Evil style game because it's kind of a
Yeah,
mix
I
of,
think you're right.
it was kind of a third-person action style game, but with like some survival elements. But it wasn't.
It was
quite
developed
RPG.
It was by Climax. I loved Climax stuff at the time.
Yeah, Soul Reaver was amazing on there. Crazy Taxi was amazing
yeah.
on there. Techromancer was an amazing Capcom fighting game.
Mach-and X was really good on there.
The Street Fighter 3 series on there was phenomenal.
Sword of the Berserk.
Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Probably the best fighting game on that console of all time. Like, just just amazing.
What about
San
What was-
Francisco Rush 2049?
what was that game that was sort of like Smash Brothers, but it was damn, I can't remember.
I
the
think
name
you're
of it.
thinking Power Stone because that was,
Power
that was the
Stone.
that was the isometric one where you're running around grabbing the Power Stones to jack up.
I
your
played
character.
that. I played that on my last
Yeah.
Dreamcast stream, Si.
Yeah,
Oh, the both of those games. The
yeah,
two
both
Power
of
I
those
have
are
Stones.
both
really
of
good.
them.
Yeah,
I have both of them.
absolutely. Yeah,
But no,
definitely.
they had a for the year and a half or so that it came out, you could find easily 30, 40 games
Yeah.
that you would just want to play all the time. And,
Marvel versus Capcom 2. Did we say that one already?
He
That
did.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Hey,
awesome.
Jared Beach Showcase. Yeah, Power Stone got mentioned on here a couple times, actually. But for the short of time as it had, this thing had a stacked library. And I do mean stacked. Because you had the Tony Hawk series that was on there.
Yes.
That was cross-platformed on a lot of other consoles, but it was phenomenal on the Dreamcast. You
Yep.
had all sorts of stuff that kind of got its start there, or just had one of the best versions on there.
Hey, did y'all get
Virtua Tennis? Remember Virtua Tennis?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Virtua Tennis.
Wacky Races was another one that somebody mentioned. that
Wacky
just mentioned it was
Racers?
solid.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have that.
Yeah.
Plus,
I never played
Looney
that one,
Tunes.
but that one looks
What,
fun.
Wacky Racers? Oh
Yeah,
my
I never
goodness.
played it.
Hey,
I have that
Pod
one, and I have
Racer,
Looney Tunes.
Honestly, Star Wars
Pod
Pod
Racer,
Racer
dude.
on there was
Pod
Pod Racer,
amazing.
I've got that.
Did y'all ever-
my
did you-
my Dreamcast library is pretty vast.
Did y'all ever get to try that unreleased Castlevania that they put that
Yes.
demo?
No, I never got
Yes.
to try that. It looked good though.
It's pretty cool.
I
It's not.
also ha-
It's just like a demo kind of because
Yeah.
it's not really. But it's. Cool.
I also have the homebrewed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Cowabunga collection. So
Yeah.
Wacky Races was solid. So was Looney Tunes Space Race.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Ikaruga.
Ikaruga. Yeah.
Yeah, Typing of the Dead,
Yep.
Ikaruga.
I tried typing. I have the keyboard and mouse, and I've tried typing the dead, but I suck at that. I got a long way to go on that one.
Metropolis Street Racer.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude. Yes, that one's really good. That one's really.
Yep.
It's not as good as Tokyo Extreme Racer, but no, I'm just.
Yes, it is. It's better.
But guys,
You know-
we should probably wrap this up here pretty shortly because we've all
And
got
don't forget-
it's
yeah.
11 o'clock.
Don't forget too that Sega did also bring back some franchises like Echo the Dolphin, which was a
Yes.
pretty solid 3D Echo the Dolphin.
I never got into Echo the Dolphin. Like I've messed with the Genesis one a few times, and
I used to love those.
it was
Yep.
it was not really for me. Let's just put it that way.
So I will tell you, Itchy, there's another way. So I have a Hyperkin HDMI cable on the Dreamcast coming out, which takes the VGA signal, and then I run it into a Barsai M Classic, and the quality is amazing.
I have a adapter from Kaiko that's really good too.
Yeah, the Kaiko stuff is not bad at all.
Yeah.
So, Itchy, I do Dreamcast streams now and again on the Mondays that we don't do RetroRoots.
Yeah,
I'm
'cause
happy to.
This is an every other week podcast for you guys who are
Yeah.
new to it, so we won't have one. What is going on? What's that noise?
I'm like, are you stirring tea? What
It's
is
like
going on? Here?
Driving me crazy.
Good
Oh,
God,
shit.
Mullis.
It's the unpopped kernels from my
Okay.
popcorn.
How long
Oh
have
my
you
God.
been around microphones again? Like, not sure if you know how
Well,
these
it's
things
like-
work.
You wouldn't even know he's a musician by the way he's handling a mic tonight.
Mr. Bigglesworth gets upset, people die.
Jesus.
I keep forgetting this is a very sensitive microphone.
Oh my God. Killing me, man. It's starting to give me a headache. I'm like, what the hell?
Keep forgetting, as though he's not doing this on purpose. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's absolutely doing this on purpose. All right.
Oh,
So-
wait, how does this work again? I just don't understand how it works.
Oh,
All
dude,
right.
Itchy, you got the DC HDMI mod. There's a version 2 of that's out now. And I don't know if that guy is selling it yet. It's the DC Digital HW2. I thought about it. I'm not sure I have the guts to try it.
He's giving us a sample of his new song that features
popcorn kernels. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
2024. Yeah.
Sega.
Oh God.
Don't do this.
I love my Dreamcast.
No.
All right.
Don't do this.
All right. We got to wrap this up now. All right, Si, what you got going on this week?
I don't have anything going on. You can wrap up.
Okay, Mike, what have you got going on? I swear to God,
let's see.
I'm going to mute you if you do the damn popcorn thing again.
It's too tempting.
Let's say my finger's right here on the damn button. I'll hang up on you.
Is it the button that Dr. Evil has where he Anyway, never mind.
Yeah. He'll be very badly burned.
I'm still alive.
Is this thing still on?
Yeah, it's still on.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So there is a Microsoft Develop Direct on Thursday. So tomorrow, instead of the NLG show, I am doing a regular NLG Live. I am not sure yet what I am playing. Might do some more Starfield. Might start the Evil Within. I've been dying to try a new game that I haven't played yet. So that'll be tomorrow instead of Thursday. Wednesday, Peter, HTK has begun to pick up Wednesdays now. So Wednesday will be NLG Live with Peter. I'm not sure yet what he's going to be doing.
Comments gold.
So on Thursday will be the NLG show. Instead of Tuesday, we will be covering the Microsoft. That's not happening, but they are going to talk about the new Indiana Jones game finally. So that's why we're moving the show.
Okay.
And then Friday is Friday night with Peter and Mike. It is very likely we be back to Fortnite because that just seems to be what we're.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
So
hey, we didn't talk about the SG-1000 and the.
You missed that. That was the first. That was the first night.
Let's go ahead and just start over right
now.
Yes.
So Galaxy, that's exactly why we're moving the NLG show from Tuesday to Thursday this particular week. Otherwise, it's always on Tuesday nights. But this week we're swapping it so that we can. Yeah, the problem is Galaxy. It's also 3:00 in the afternoon. My time, and I have to kind of work.
Yeah,
so,
most of us are at work.
Yeah, I don't understand why
we fortunately or unfortunately have not gotten popular enough online to make this our full-time job.
Exactly. So we've got a full boat week of streaming ahead and podcasting and stuff like that. And then this weekend I'm going to be out, so nothing going on. Maybe Sunday night, but likely not. But work takes priority. Otherwise, so that's what's going on. And then next Monday, I'll be back with Monday Night Retro. I don't know what I'm going to be doing for that yet. I really enjoyed the TurboGrafx stuff I played last week, Si. I know you hung out for a lot of that. Yeah, I would be happy to go back to some more Dreamcast stuff if people are up for it. Or there is some new stuff in the Antstream Arcade. The Xbox version of that finally got Namco games, even though they lost all their Midway games. So I might
can't believe
check
they
those
dropped
out.
Midway for Namco, but I guess the
I
licensing
can't
was
believe
just
that.
too much.
It had
I
to
gotta
have
imagine
been.
the licensing was insane.
Yeah, well, part of it is I don't care what it costs you, keep it, but at the same time, Warner Brothers has been losing their ever-loving minds lately. Like, they're just making stupid decision after stupid decision.
Oh, trust me, I've been playing Mortal Kombat 1. They've made plenty of dumb decisions.
Yeah, I don't understand. Oh, Galaxy said I could play some Saturn. I could be talked into some Saturn, Brother Galaxy, and you know what? Since you're there all the time, that's what we're doing. Galaxy Red has called it. My next week retro will be Saturn, and that's done on real hardware. So,
yeah. So
that's what I got going on. Sorry for the long-winded.
No, you're fine. On my channel, things are kind of in flux. As I said, I'm kind of redesigning the room so I can do a few more live shows. To get an idea, I don't know if I can share my screen. I think I... Hold on one second. Let me go to stream view. Let's see if I can bring in display capture here. I don't know if I can make this large enough so anybody can see it because it's in Notepad. There we go. Alright, let's get rid of this. Let me see if I can make this large enough so you guys can kind of see kind of where my headspace is. Some of the live show ideas I want to do, kind of moving forward, are kind of like I said, the deep discussion stuff that I want to do. I kind of want a decade in trivia show, a gameplay focus show, custom maps, challenges, etc. I don't know how long that'll survive. It depends on my tolerance. I'm often not good at those. Video games is art, kind of looking at various different video game series and styles. What's unique and classic and stylistic about them, which ones we would like to see more of. Games that changed how we looked at video games, which is kind of an extension of another series I want to do, whereas I've done like moments in gaming history. I want to do games that more or less made certain video game types take off, right? And that could be another kind of short run series. And does it hold up kind of show where it's more, TV shows, movies, old and new, what holds up, what can one learn from the other, that kind of stuff. So I thought those would be some fun ideas to do this year. The first things first is to kind of get things reorganized a little bit and kind of get my headspace back more into the streaming focus. But this and a lot more stuff is stuff that I kind of want to start bringing to the channel while keeping RetroRoots running every other week as normal. So
nice.
So that way, we can kind of, stick with those.
I want to see a stream that's nothing but Notepad shit.
Well,
by the way,
I could sit down and write a script while everybody's talking to me. It would be the most incoherent thing ever, but sure.
All right. I dropped this up in the YouTube chat because I keep forgetting. I apologize to everybody on YouTube. I keep forgetting you guys don't. I am only on Rumble. So I put that in the chat there for them.
Well, you're also on YouTube right now.
I'm on YouTube now because I'm on Nick's.
Oh my God.
I'm just saying, technically,
Yes, technically, I'm on YouTube.
More
right now,
of
yes.
Mullis's lies exposed. I'm sorry.
God. You could do that as well. I do most of my writing in Notepad just because it's simple and easy to use. I don't need much to write my scripts, and it just makes for a consistent way to just transfer things back and forth. So I don't.
Yeah, we all do Notepad. I'm just giving you a hard time.
That's just all I mess with. So it works for me.
Notepad is good.
Yep, pretty much. Fighting
now
game fans
Windows
really miss me more coming against it. Did play the original ones. Favorites not actually mainline one. Shaolin Monks.
Shaolin Monks was
I never
good.
messed with Shaolin Monks or the Sub-Zero mythologies. Weren't they gonna do like a Special Forces one as well? I thought that one
They
got
were.
scrapped.
They were.
They did like 2 of those and they didn't do so well, so they kind of scrapped them. Honestly, the Sub-Zero mythologies, I kind of understand why that one didn't do well. It looked rough.
You know what? I have a probably unpopular opinion, but I like those PS2 ones. I like those ones. They were fun.
Oh, you're talking about MK4 on PS2
not MK4. I don't remember what the names of them were, but there were several on PS2 that were pretty cool. They were kind of cartoonish, but they were pretty cool. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, so I never messed with either one of those. I never really got out of the mainline fighting game ones because those were the ones that I played.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat Special Forces, that was the other one. Yeah, that was the other one that I thought I wasn't sure that it actually made it out around. I knew Shaolin Monks and I knew Mythologies made it out. But they were going to do a whole huge line of those at one point, but they never did really get them done all that cleanly. Anyway, I think we're going to call it a night here, guys. It's a little after 11 o'clock my time, which means it's after midnight size time, which means it's after 1 o'clock in the morning Mike's time, so I should let these guys get to bed. Thank you, everybody who joined in, both new and regulars. We always appreciate having you guys here. I do have content coming out this week. It's coming out on Tuesday and Thursday, so that'll be the regular stuff that you guys are used to seeing on the channel. I just moved the days because we had this going on and I didn't want to back to back. I have at least one new series that's starting up that I've done the voiceover work on, and I got to do some writing on some of the others in order to start getting those off the ground. So it'll kind of be a slow ramp up to this year. Probably more like one video a week or every other week until I kind of start figuring out how things flow and if I can move any faster and not kill myself. The idea is to bring you guys good content that we can like talk about and have a good time with, and not kill myself between trying to keep myself healthy and employed, that kind of thing. So I kill myself with workload.
Employment is good.
I know what you meant. I'm sorry.
But anyway, thank you guys all for hanging out with us tonight. I had a blast. Hopefully you guys had a good time, and hopefully you guys will follow the channel if you're not already following it. Check out these guys' channels. They all do great work. There's plenty of people in the chat on both sides of the pond, both YouTube and Rumble, who have great content. I recommend you check them out.
Indeed.
Happy birthday, Nick.
Happy birthday.
No idea where that came from.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, no.
Night, everybody.
Good night, Play On Gamers. Good night, Hemp. Lots of love, brother.
Good night, everybody.